It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned in to the Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We spent this week in the heart of the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois, at the Democratic National Convention, bringing you insights from inside the building with Greg Clugston, White House correspondent from Salem, as well as reporting from the protesters happening outside. 4 days, Billy, I have spent with smelly hippies.
Hopefully,
and one wizard. And one wizard.
Yes, the wizard. Oh, that was funny. That was really funny.
Definitely a life experience I'm never going to forget.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn out to be 1968.
It didn't.
Which everybody was anticipating it to be.
Yeah.
And I found myself, Bill, yesterday right next to the march organizers and the police as they negotiated openly about where they were going to be moving. Because at one point, the rioters got frustrated. We went on this little mile-long march right alongside the United Center. Lovely march, just full of curse words and anger and frustration. It's one of those walks that you'll never forget. By the way, I got an email. I do need. I spoke with a pacifist, a Mennonite pastor, who got my email. We exchanged emails, and he wrote me an email, and he was like, "Jeff, you're not being honest. There were plenty of peaceful people in there." And I'm like, "Yep, you're not wrong. Plenty of peaceful people, but the majority of them very frustrated." But with that caveat, they got to a point where the protesters got very angry, and I thought it was going to explode. It got loud. We were underneath one of the elevated subways.
Oh, yeah.
On a street near the United Center, and the crowd was going crazy, and they paused and they refused to move. So police came in to negotiate with the leaders of the movement about what was going to happen. And it was at that moment that I thought this thing could explode. There were nearby Philly cheesesteak businesses. I'm like, they can just go right through the windows there. What's going to happen? They didn't, but I saw the negotiations. I heard the negotiations. I saw what happened afterwards. We're going to get into this a little bit later after the news with Blake. But why didn't it turn into 1968? Well, I saw it firsthand. So we'll have some live reporting there. We'll be covering Kamala's major speech inside the DNC last night. And I actually went back to listen to her 2020 speech.
Really?
Which took place with no crowd. If you remember those days, it was so weird. Took me back to how much I hated those days when we all self-isolated. But listened a little bit to her speech there. Compared it to last night's speech, a lot of similarities, but she's now the Democrat nominee. I think Republicans have a big mountain to climb. There's not only a natural cotton candy bump that's taken place as a result of the DNC, but I think there's real momentum behind Kamala. They've tapped into the same thing they did in 2008. Republicans never really had an answer for Barack Obama in stopping him. I'm not sure they have that now with Kamala Harris. They got to get real serious. We're going to cover that, so much more. We have a number of guests, including Joshua Sharp, Greg Clugston, and the folks that are going to be hosting us next week, Billy, are going to be joining us as well as we go out to Doug's Diner. So lots of news, lots of interviews. Stick with us throughout the entirety of the show. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 61 and mostly clear. It's beautiful outside. Expecting a high of 87 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
The path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys.
Kamala Harris closed out the DNC last night with the acceptance speech and is voicing her support for Israel and for Palestine.
Now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear.
Thank you.
I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself. And I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7,
Where's the butt?
including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival.
Where's the butt?
At the same time,
at the same time.
what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating.
Here comes the
So
crowd.
many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom.
And the crowd went nuts.
She's going to bring it all. Now, Blake,
Yes.
I specifically asked the marchers yesterday, these pro-Palestinian marchers, you've essentially been given the middle finger by the Democrat Party. They don't care at all about you. They're sitting in there supporting Israel. They're bringing family members of Hamas captive victims up there. They're openly standing with Israel. They'll give you a little lip service, but how does that make you feel? You came all the way to Chicago to protest, and the Democrats don't care. And it was interesting. This gets into why we didn't have 1968. The nature of the revolutionary was just not the same. They were, well, gee golly, man, I'm just really frustrated that Kamala Harris didn't really take my thoughts into consideration.
Than 68.
Well, I guess I'm just going to go home now. I mean, that was kind of it.
No idea what they're doing there, right?
No, they did it. And two, the police presence was huge.
That's awesome.
Huge. You're not going to go into a fight with 15 people that oppose you, right? One guy, and just like expand that. There must have been, I'm guessing there were 5,000 protesters yesterday, and probably 2,000 to 3,000 police.
Wow.
So every single section of that parade was met by two barriers of people. Of police officers in riot gear. Like, it was just not going to go
the way
up.
it should have been in 2020.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, Blake, you love something, you protect it. Yeah. Bottom line.
Exactly.
And the police got super serious about it, and they protected their community. I mean, what, 50 people arrested over 4 days, mostly in one incident that happened on Tuesday? That's it. And what was supposed to be 1968? I mean, it was... It was interesting, but I mean, they've essentially, pro-Palestinians got ignored, other than that little last sentence of, we feel terrible that what's happening in Palestine. We want to work to make sure innocent people aren't killed. They didn't abandon Israel. That was the goal. True. They wanted the Democrat Party to abandon Israel. That did not happen at the DNC.
So who do you think all those people will vote for? Or
I asked them that exact question. I asked them exact question. And it's like watching like an RMGO or libertarian guy, right? You're just, it's the same feeling. It's kind of like, well, I really am frustrated. I'm frustrated, but the other guy's really bad.
And he's really old.
Right. No, I mean, that was the answer I got. I talked to these three sisters. They all had matching glasses. They were all like in their 70s. And just think classic Democrat woman, right? And they're out there. Kamala Harris, does not go far enough to support the Palestinians. She's got blood on her hands. I mean, some of these people were even chanting like, killer Kamala. So Who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? Well, there's the other guy. So, I mean, there's like, they just like settled in on the fact, Like they're
Right.
I was kind of disappointed that they weren't quite the anarchist revolutionaries that I thought they might show up. They were just kind of milk toast. That's right.
Just like everyone in the arena who will believe whatever came out of her pie hole last night.
That's exactly right.
Everything was a lie. She is flip-flopped on everything, Jeff, and hasn't had a press conference in 32 days. 32 freaking days.
She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to, man.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, she is going to walk across that finish line. They did the exact same thing to her that they did to Barack Obama, and Republicans never figured out a way to stop him. Look, we complained he was the most liberal senator. I've heard that same complaint the last few weeks. I heard he was unexperienced. I've heard that same complaint the last few weeks. At the end of the day, people just like it's the uninformed voter, because if you were a smart voter, if you were engaged, if you cared about the facts and policy, you're already in the conservative camp. Because you know that nothing Kamala Harris has done has actually worked.
Right.
But
she's historic.
It's exactly. It's this like I'm this part of history, and she's my gal pal.
Yeah,
I'm going to support her because she's my gal pal. It's that low information voter.
Yeah, low information voter, no doubt. Yep. And don't forget, she's the border czar, but she doesn't want anything to change down there. Here's DJT.
All of these things that she talked about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do everything, but she didn't do any of it. She could have done it 3.5 years ago. She could do it tonight by leaving the auditorium and going to Washington, D.C. and closing the border. She doesn't need a bill. I didn't have a bill. I closed the border and created the safest border we've ever had in the history of our country. She could have done all of these things, and she could still do them. She's got 4.5, 5 months left. She can go there right now. She can do all of the things, many of the things that she's talking about and complaining about.
Yeah, go shut down the border right now, Kamala. Author Joe Concha, he was on with Hugh this morning. Good stuff.
She hasn't done a press conference in the last 5.5 years since running for president the first time, since being vice president all these years. And people say, well, vice presidents don't get press conferences. And last check, Mike Pence gave 9 in 2020 alone. And now, obviously, as a candidate. So no press conferences, no tough interviews. This is the strategy. But I think the debate on ABC on September 10th, that is a place where she won't have a teleprompter, won't have pre-scripted remarks, and may have to answer some questions of relevance where that could be the whole ball game right there if Donald Trump plays his cards right and really prepares and is ready for the zingers that she's practicing as we speak.
RFK Jr. filed to have his name removed from the Arizona ballot on Thursday and is expected to announce today in Phoenix that he's ending his campaign and endorsing DJT at a rally in Arizona.
Hate on me. Can't stop DJT, and I ain't going nowhere, so you can get to know me.
Trump said he'd consider giving RFK Jr. a role in his administration. We should find out today if the Federal Reserve plans to cut interest rates next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell will deliver his keynote speech at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium in beautiful Wyoming. Economists from around the world are gathered in the resort town for the symposium. The Gultra fire near Golden is fully contained, thankfully, and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says more than 60 firefighters took on the blaze. It started Tuesday afternoon. No homes were threatened by the fire, which burned on the north side of Highway 6 near Tunnel 1 in Clear Creek Canyon. It covered about 205 acres. News is brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. The Broncos getting ready for Sunday's preseason finale against the Cardinals at Empower Field at Mile High. All right. 58 in Littleton, 59 in Glendale, and 61 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue Friday. Thankfully, Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Not much is going to change with our weather here in Denver and along the Front Range through the weekend. We'll continue to have seasonably warm temperatures and afternoon and evening chances for thunderstorms. Mid to upper 80s today, lower 60s tonight, 85 to 90 Saturday, 80s Sunday, cooling to just the 70s and low 80s Monday, with late-day thunderstorms through Monday possible. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your retirement plans with a free review to help provide asset protection, long-term care, or even income for life. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. Meteorologist Don Day on the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
This really is a great city, Billy. I've never spent a lot of time here. First time I've really gotten to go to restaurants. And
so you're saying you don't visit your brother much?
No, not with my kids and all the stuff we're doing. We're like, if we see each other, it's often on a beach somewhere.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's nice. Yeah, Chicago's a fantastic town.
Very cool. Very cool. Enjoy it. That song just got me. So, all right, Billy. So let's talk about these protests. 4 days of protests here in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. Got to be a part of all of them. And and even got recognized, and somebody Googled KNUS, and that's when my relationship with some of them changed. I got a little audio I can't play, but funny. One lady, when I was interviewing Queers for Gaza, and they, by the way, that's it's weird. Like there's just images sometimes that are definitions of ideas, and I got a picture of the sign that says Queers for Gaza, and I'm like, there's not a better image of acting against your own self-interest than Queers for Gaza.
Yep, exactly.
But here's the problem with a lot of these folks. They just live in these alternate realities with alternate facts. Like for instance, I'm interviewing her, and we're going to put all this content together so you'll be able to watch it on social media and stuff in the coming weeks. But no, gay people live great in Gaza.
What?
Oh, yeah. There's this great gay community. And it's like when I was talking to Palestinians about the hostages, and they're like, oh, do you know the hostages send thank you notes back to their Gazan captors? So you're
sure they do.
And Rich Sokol messaged me. He's like, the 6 hostages that were just discovered, their bodies, they were all executed.
Yeah.
And I was been text messaging with Rich, and Rich is like, do you think their family is going to send thank you notes? I mean, like this.
Excellent.
It's so hard to have really good conversations when people live in those alternative realities. You're like, okay, I can't even respond to the idea that you think that these hostages are better treated in Palestine than they are in Israel.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what they have to do inside their brain in order to justify their actions.
That's exactly right.
If they had to confront and reflect on how they're actually treated, and the fact that some of the hostages have been executed, and the way certain portions of minority communities like the LGBTQ were treated, if they had to reflect on that, they couldn't hold the positions they have. So they have to make excuses. They have to invent these imaginary thank you letters, because otherwise taking the hostages would be a bad thing. But since they send thank you letters, now we can excuse that and I can still hold my position. Yeah, they're just making excuses for themselves in their brain.
100%. Or the idea that October 7th was a psyop, that it never really happened. So then you get into like the Alec Jones world, right?
Exactly. The crisis
the
actors,
school shooting
exactly
didn't really happen. So it's a hard world to reason into, but I spent 4 days with them, got to see some of the regular folks, got to see the leaders, got to see the people that have kind of committed their lives to this. I will tell you, I did not see overt hatred, right? Like it wasn't, there was never once a chant of like, kill all the Jews or, actually, there was almost no mention on Donald Trump. So it wasn't like rage fest, pure hatred towards people, but it definitely, anti-Semitism is right under the surface there. And you see it pop up when like the slightest Israeli flag shows up and they just explode like angry hornets with middle fingers and F-bombs and all that stuff. So it is kind of bizarre where you're going, okay, they're not out there just outright in their vitriol hatred towards people, although some of their chants definitely got pretty close to the line, killer Kamala and, F this and F that and that type of thing. But you knew it was there. The anti-Semitism was right there. So for 4 days, generally, with the exception of Tuesday when the violence took place at the Israeli consulate, they met at a park called Union Park. And they would march about a mile from Union Park to the United Center, stop in front of the United Center for about 25, 30 minutes, make lots of statements, yell at things, and then they would continue their march in a loop back to Union Park, and then the crowd would disperse there. Now, this was probably about a mile. The entire mile, you had police on bicycles right up against the sidewalk. So you can imagine you have the street, and then there's a curb, right? So the police use the curb to position their bikes, and then they do back wheel and front wheel overlapping. And then they would create that for a mile. Now they would move along with the location, with the parade, to make sure that there was never a gap. Okay. So you had that as barrier number one. So you couldn't even really get off the road.
On a side note, how long do you think they practiced that? Because, in my mind,
a lot.
In my mind, they are like the high school marching band. They're at a parking lot somewhere. I'm like, okay, left side, forward, right side, and there's coordination. I'm sorry. I just think they're the high school marching band at that point. But
Billy,
continue.
100%, because they would talk to each other, and they had like little code words. They'd have like little code words, and they would like tap each other's shoulders and stuff like that.
Oh, that's good.
So you essentially couldn't get off the road. Now, me as a reporter and wearing all my 710K and US stuff, they would let me by. But if you were a masked Palestinian protester, no, they're not letting you off the road. So step one, keep everybody on the road. You can't get off. You can't get on the sidewalks. You can't go pound on windows. You're on the road. Then they had layer two, which was a protection at the back end of the sidewalk. So you could, and basically media walked the sidewalks, and we would go in and out. But media could walk the sidewalks. But then at the other end of the sidewalk, you had standing police officers in riot gear.
Oh, interesting.
So you had two layers of walls of police officers surrounding you the entire time, shoulder to shoulder for a mile.
Wow.
And they would move if they needed to along the route to cover any gaps, but there weren't any gaps. I mean, it was amazing. We'll put this video footage up. Basically, it was I would do the show. I'd go back, get ready, head downtown. Then I'd be downtown till 8 or 9, 10 o'clock at night, get back to my family's house at 11, go to bed and get up. So we haven't had time to even pull the content together and get it organized. So this will all be coming. But that was a big reason why you didn't have any violence, because you can't even get to the buildings to smash. You're stuck in the middle of the road.
That's smart.
So that was really, really smart by the police. Now, you had one police officer that was given a radio. He was dressed in khakis and a white polo shirt. It was clear that he was a police officer. Yeah. He was at the very front of the parade. Now, he wasn't directly with the people because they carried this big banner, but he would be right in front of them the whole time on the radio, telling the police and coordinating with what was happening the entire time. Wow. And he could talk directly to the organizers. So if the organizers expressed some frustration, they literally walked 5 feet to a police officer with a radio, talk about it, they'd figure it out, and then they'd go back and, continue.
Wow.
So well coordinated, lots of communication. Now, this is where it even gets crazier. Billy, so I've given you what happened on the sidewalk with the bikes. Yeah. I've given you the riot police, a step back. So now I want to talk about inside the parade.
Yeah,
you had people with yellow vests that were volunteers associated with the Palestinian marchers.
Okay.
So these are people that are on the Palestinian team.
Yeah.
Okay. They are everywhere.
Okay.
With their little yellow vests on. Now, you could tell that there was a handful of folks that were itching for a fight. They just showed up that way. They had the goggles.
Yeah.
They had the mask. They had the little first aid kit. Yep. They had a helmet if they needed to. I mean, it was like, let's go. They were ready for anything to pop off. Just give me anything. I'm going to start breaking stuff. Okay. Anytime those guys started to get riled up, yell at a cop.
Yeah.
Or get going, or maybe there's a few Trump guys. By the way, I'll get to this in a second, the agitators. But you had some agitators that would come in with an American flag and be like, America first. And oh my gosh, they would stir up all these, anger and frustration, or the Israeli flag, or Trump 2024. So maybe in a parade of 3,000 to 5,000 people, you had 6 agitators. It was small. Okay.
Oh, wow, okay.
Not a ton of them. But the minute those guys started to do stuff, the organizers of the event with those little volunteers would pull them back. They would get in the way. Or if someone went up to yell at a cop, this little person with this yellow vest on would go stand in between the Palestinian yelling at the cop.
Oh my gosh.
And stop that. So the event organizers police themselves.
That's interesting.
Which was really interesting.
That is not what I expected at all. Which it's an insight. It's somewhat of an insight to the organizers there, that we thought they were coming to create something out of the 60s. We thought it was going to be,
right.
I would have lost a lot of money in Vegas yesterday because I would have put a ton of money down that they were going to burn something. They were going to create a statement. That's what I thought was going to happen. And
I did too.
Yeah, the fact they were more concerned about, no, control our lunatics inside the group. That, tamp them down, make sure. That's interesting. Again, the mosh pit experience. It's, you're looking out for each other. That's interesting. That is really interesting.
So you had that dynamic going on. So they themselves did not allow their own people to get out of control. That's a really important element. So you had a big, overwhelming police presence. You had the organizers of the event themselves trying to keep their own people in check. And then you had these very unique teams. So there's this little brigade of green hat wearing lawyers. Okay.
Oh.
So these are lawyers. They won't talk to the media. I tried to interview them. They won't answer, but they're lawyers from town. And they put on these little green hats, and it says legal aid or legal team or whatever. And if there's ever something that pops off, they race in there and they immediately advise somebody of their options.
Yeah.
Right. So they were more useful on Tuesday when violence erupted and people were being arrested and processed, which we have video of. They were there right alongside them going, basically, remain silent, don't say anything, don't say anything, right there protecting the rights of these protesters. So you had this teams of lawyers, but then you had the organizers themselves, which included negotiators from the protesters. And this was what I saw directly. So at one moment, when I thought yesterday we were going to really pop off and there might be violence, we're under this overpass. We've had 4 days of the DNC essentially ignoring the demands of these protesters. There's no other way around it. And they were even honest about it. They're like, they don't care. They're standing with Israel in there. So I thought after 4 days of this last night, this was going to be the culmination where you might see things burning. So we're under this overpass or this elevated train. people are really getting loud. I mean, they are yelling. The audio has gone up to another level. People are getting fired up, all that stuff. And I would say 3 negotiators pop out of the front of the march and go talk directly to the chief of the police that was there, and this guy with the radio, right? And they're trying to figure out how to, or essentially what they're going to do next. Some of the people are saying, take over the streets, stay on the streets, don't give up the streets. We control the streets. And this was a major thoroughfare through Chicago. And the police are going, take it back to the park. Take it back to the park, okay? We got to do that. So they're sitting there I'm standing right next to there. I got it all on GoPro. They're sitting there talking to each other, going back and forth. And at one point, I heard this line. It was from one of the police chief leaders. He goes, "You guys are not keeping up to your end of the bargain."
Oh, that's interesting.
Is that interesting?
That is. Wow.
So what does that communicate to you? What it communicates to me is that they had been talking and coordinating ahead of time as to what these protests were going to look like.
Yeah, and they were talking to the police about, we're going to go here, we're going to do this, we're going to, and they're trying to prevent a large number of arrests, is my thought, is that, no, we're not going to be the violent people, and they also don't want to provoke a violent response from the police, which, again, you would think that's the visual they want. That's interesting.
Isn't that
really interesting?
So what that communicated to me was it was likely that the organizers, the negotiators, they actually dedicated negotiators with the police. I think there's some type of legal background there, had been for weeks, even maybe months up to the DNC, working directly with the Chicago Police Department on what this was going to look like. They had direct lines of communication. So this was not a antagonistic relationship. The Chicago Police Department at one point were saying, if you stay here, your followers are going to leave. If you want to have the biggest impact, let's go back to the park where you guys can, like, it was not like kind of old school Billy Club cop attitude, right? Of like, you smelly hippies, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah, you move because I told you to. Yeah.
Right. It was, okay, we've negotiated with you guys what this is going to look like. You're not keeping up your end of the deal. Things are not looking here. You're the leaders of this. Let's go back to the park. Get your people back to the park. And that's kind of where it dispersed from. So really interesting. A lot of the assumptions I had that this was going to explode, that there were anarchists, which there were some. And I talked to him. I got a really funny interview with an anarchist.
Oh, I bet.
They're just interesting people, man.
Oh, yes.
All black flag, all that stuff. It wasn't controlled by them. It seemed to be controlled by reasonable people.
Wow.
That wanted to, did not want violence to engage, that had a direct relationship with the police. You add that and combine that with the fact that the police had an overwhelming presence. They were well organized. They did not allow gaps. They didn't allow things to start.
Yeah.
That was the thing. They just didn't allow things to start. When things would start to boil up, volunteers within the organization itself. Because imagine, Billy, you and I, and we'll get to a break here in a second. I know we're way overdue, but imagine you and I are at a bar and you start to pop off with somebody, and I come up and I'm like, Billy, let's go, man.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
You hear that from a friend and you go, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Or your friend steps between you and the guy or person you're confronting or whatever the issue is. They step between you and break that line of sight. Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
I think that was a big component of it, right? You had all these little yellow vested volunteers that would, okay, I know you're angry at the Jews.
Yeah. But that's not them right there. Yeah.
Come on, let's walk. Walk. There's just one dude with an Israeli flag, that type of thing. So I think that was a big component. So that's why I essentially believe it didn't become 1968 again. It was all those components working together.
And something we didn't expect, because all the pre-sale was about what are the protests going to look like, what the violence is going to look like. And leading up to this event, their MO has been disruption at the core. Yeah. We've seen them disrupt speeches. We've seen them disrupt activities. We've saw them disrupt college graduations, not to mention breaking into actual college buildings and then staying there for a while. So that's what they had been doing. And of course, we also talk about just camping out in various places and on various campuses, including here in Denver. And instead of proceeding with that MO, they went with the regular protest. That's interesting. And it seems like part of it is executed because, as you pointed out, the self-policing, but also the negotiation and the conversation with the police, which, again, I can't imagine that any of the protesters, any of the college campuses were communicating with either campus security or with campus leadership. But here, they took a different tact. That's interesting. Oh, and I'd love to hear what you think when we get back, talking to them about why they're still shut out, that you're out here protesting, but the DNC and the party of power inside the building didn't care. They looked at you and went,
I have an answer for that. And they do feel a little optimistic. I'll tell you why. Ooh. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Bill broadcasting on final day from the Democratic National Convention. Head back to Denver. I want to especially thank Branch Planning for helping put this together and the great people over at 710 KNUS. Billy, nobody else from Colorado was with the protesters.
What?
Nobody else from Colorado was with the protesters.
See, that's why our listeners are here with us, because you're giving the flavor that nobody else is. We've got Greg Clugston, and he's inside the building. Everybody else is like, we're inside the building. Yeah, we've got a solid
Kyle
guy.
Clark and Jason Crow were grabbing a beer together. I think.
So the thing is, it's Greg's got decades as far as the newsman, so he's going to give us what's happening inside. You got the skinny on what's going outside, and we had a call from Joe from Arvada. He was busy this morning, couldn't join us live on the air. But morning, Joe. Hope you're going to have a fantastic weekend. Give us a ring next week. But he thinks the protesters were calm because the Democrats wanted it calm. That if it was Donald Trump and these same protesters showed up, it would be a different approach by the police
100%.
in order to allow the violence. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if the police would allow the violence, but I think like what you saw in 2020, I always felt like the progressives were a little bit like the communist shock troops. Part of what they're communicating with these riots that take place is that the current political leadership is unfit to keep things in control. So in 2020, for instance, in the burning of cities around the BLM riots and all that, yes, they were trying to address racial issues that they felt frustrated about, but they were also in many ways trying to vent anger towards Donald Trump and make things look chaotic. And I think if you had Donald Trump as president last night, it might have gotten violent. I don't think it has anything to do with the police allowing it to happen. I just think that the nature and the tenor of the protesters would have been a lot more angry.
Interesting.
And you run into this when you ask them, okay, well, who are you going to vote for? Right? I asked them that very question. Like, Democrats in there clearly didn't listen to you.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, Jeff, that's not true.
Really?
If you go back to maybe, 2000, 2004, 2008, Palestinians would have never been mentioned on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. And here you have Kamala Harris saying innocent Palestinians shouldn't be killed. So they justify it in that sense. I think that crew, some of them will go Jill Stein. I didn't even know she was still running.
I didn't either.
I was like, really?
I'm like, really?
Jill Stein?
Yeah.
Some of them will go Jill Stein. 90% of them will vote for Kamala at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think they will, only because they know that Trump will be worse for what they want. They talk a big game about, I'm going to vote on principle, I'm going to do this, and they need to earn my vote. But many of them,
binary choice.
Yep, exactly. Understand that by making the choice to either not vote for Kamala or just vote for a different candidate, that allows more space for Trump. And you're going to have to deal with 4 years of something you really, really don't want. Yeah.
So interesting. We'll provide a lot of comment. We'll have more conversations the 7 o'clock hour. Joshua Sharp and I are going to talk about the Palestinians' protest, what they were saying, confront some of their claims. We had Rich Sokol on yesterday. A lot of great feedback on that. So we're going to continue to talk with our Jewish friends about what the Palestinians are saying about them and this war and all that. So great conversation the 7 o'clock hour. 8 o'clock, Greg Clugston from within the DNC, White House correspondent for the Salem Media Network, is going to join us. And then and then in the 9 o'clock hour, we have Lindsay Marsh with Doug's Diner. So great show coming up. You're not going to want to miss it. And You Choose the News is up next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Show live from the Democratic National Convention. I'm getting an airplane back home later today, which I'm looking forward to. Chicago's been a wonderful city, but Billy, let's bring the people what they want.
Yes.
You choose the news.
It is that time of the morning where we make questionable decisions, not just because you joined us, it's because it's time for the loser edition of You Choose the News. All the stories that Jeff and Blake didn't feel were worthy of consideration come back.
You are one pathetic loser.
Let's go. Loser! You're a loser!
The Losers Club. Bunch of losers.
You're such a loser.
You made me feel like a loser!
She's a loser.
You are such a loser.
Loser.
Yes, these are the stories that Jeff and Blake were deemed unworthy for your attention, but they have another shot at glory today. You know how we roll. Earlier this week, I grabbed these stories from the interwebs. Dumb things us humans have done, giving it a ridiculous headline to play this fake radio news game show because nobody in charge has any idea we do something so meaningless, worthless, and silly. Thanks a lot for playing along and keeping it a secret. We can't believe they still don't know. Alrighty, gentlemen, here are our returning stories. Headline number 1, deploy the Harland and Wolf PR strategy. Headline number 2, rules for the poors. Headline number 3, check your itinerary. And headline number 4, it's not stealing, it's resource reallocation. Mr. Hunt, your choice.
Let's start with the not stealing.
Yes, it's not stealing. It's called resource reallocation. That's what you get to do when you are a billionaire. Tom Petty's iconic Malibu mansion has just hit the market for $19 million, but it is his neighbor, James Kohlberg, right down the road that is saying, something's going on here. One of the other billionaires is stealing some stuff. Stealing sand. We've got 2 billionaires. One is the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers. He has been doing some renovations on his house, and he's decided, I have a lot of money. I would like to keep a lot of my money, and there's sand right down over there on the beach. Why should I pay to have sand taken to my house when I can just go down there and take it from the beach? It's free sand, isn't it? No, it's not free sand. You just can't do that. Man. But he's been showing up and he's been scooping sand out of the public beach to take back to his house so that he can do some renovations.
Dude, there's a reason why people are billionaires.
Exactly.
They think like that.
Exactly. And again, he's not stealing it. He's just reallocating the resources that are available in the community. That's all he's doing. So it's not really stealing. Yes, resourceful. Exactly. And it really helps when you can afford a big front end loader to be able to take all the sand.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have that. Yes.
You're not just putting it in your pockets.
That's exactly. I'd be putting it in a backpack. That's the way I have to do it, and then everybody notice. Alrighty. So, Blake Olson in the news department. Here are your choices, sir. Deploy the Harland Wolf PR strategy, rules for the poors, or check your itinerary.
The way you wrote that is so funny. Rules for the poor.
Thank you. Yes, there are, as you just settled, there are certain rules for the poors that do not govern people that make the big paychecks, especially someone like the newly appointed Starbucks CEO, Brian Niccol. He is not going to be required to relocate to the home office. That's weird.
Oh, this is amazing.
Everybody else that works for them has to move to the home office. But when you make enough of the monies, you don't have to. They are breaking rules so that he doesn't have to work from the home office. In fact, he is going to work on a satellite office and every once in a while commute the 1,000 miles on a corporate jet in order to get to work. Yes. Isn't that great that when you're running the company, they provide you with transportation, they pay for it, and also you can decide if you can work remotely. That doesn't work for any of the other Starbucks. Nice. Yeah, I know. Starbucks employees don't even get a bus pass. But this dude gets a corporate jet to go to and from 1,000 miles from his house to the office, and he doesn't have to show up every day. Yeah, that's great.
I will tell you, there's a moment when you sit and talk with avowed communists where you're like, I think about this when I'm listening to you.
Yes.
Shame capitalism.
Exactly. All righty, final choice, Mr. Hunt. Deploy the Harland Wolf PR strategy or check your itinerary.
Let's do the Harland Wolf PR strategy.
Yes, deploy the Harland Wolf PR strategy after Mike Lynch's multi-million-dollar yacht was overturned, sank in Italy recently. The owner of the company that made the yacht says, no, those ships are unsinkable, just like Harland Wolf said before the Titanic. Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes, that's what they said
Really?
beforehand. Yes, and the guys
Do
doing
they
this.
know what brought it down?
It was well, we can't do it right now. We've got like 5 seconds left, but I tell you.
All right, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, alongside Billy Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center, broadcasting from the heart of the Windy City at the Democrat National Convention. You know, Billy, I saw there are some other radio stations here, some media outlets hobnobbing with the rich and wealthy inside the DNC, but not us, man.
No.
We are out with the peeps, with the communists and fascists and feminists and
we're where the
environmentalists
news is.
and all the other. I'm a man of the people.
You are, and I love the fact that you were in the protests, which on social media, there are going to be some questions later on. You're going to be in some pictures you probably shouldn't be in, but that's good. That's good.
I got to go by Getty Images later today to see what popped up.
Just in case, yes. And again, think about, and people have seen you. We've been out in public a couple of times. Think about Jeff in the line of the pro-Palestinian supporters.
and the funny thing is, I'm just at that point in my career where people somehow sense that I might be somebody that hosts something or runs something, but I'm not a Benny Johnson or a Vivek Ramaswamy or a Mike Lindell that has to shave his mustache or anything.
Yes.
So people will still talk to me. So you get a lot of great conversations until they Google 710 KNUS. And the gays for Gaza were the ones that were the most angry after they had done that.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to hear about those conversations. That's going to be wonderful.
I got to tell you, man, there's a lot of things you can embrace in life. Being a gay for Gaza is one where you might just want to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Exactly. So bad.
You let them win and they invite you over for a victory party, they're probably tossing you off the roof afterwards.
Like, come up top here, see the view. No,
look, Gaza's successful. Look at all we've achieved. Come up to the roof. Look at the view.
It's a beautiful sunrise here. No, that's bad. That is bad. Yes. Do not enter any buildings that are larger than one story. There, don't.
And the feminists, the Code Pink were out there. I'm like, I don't think women are voting. Maybe they are in Palestine, but Islamic dominated communities not always most friendly to the ladies either. So
normally that some of them don't let you go outside without permission from the husband.
Right?
Like you understand what you're advocating for. Oh well, okay.
So
can't help
interesting. I feel a little schizophrenic. I'm going to take the weekend to come off of all this stuff after the show's done. But we have a lot of content, a lot to share. And I understand communists better. And a little bit later in the show, we'll get into this. Communists are changing their approach.
Really?
I noticed they had talking points.
Oh,
so the old line, where has it ever worked before?
Yeah.
They have an answer for, and they now pivot towards something else. So we'll talk about that. But coming up just after the news is Joshua Sharf. We're going to get into what some of these pro-Palestinians are saying about Israel and the war in Gaza and the DNC. What did he think about Democrats not fully abandoning Israel, which was interesting. We'll cover this and more right after the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning. So the gays for Gaza, you said, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Are they wearing shirts with double-edged swords on them, or
they were lesbians with shaved heads? And just unique human beings. One was willing to talk to me. The other one was Googling me and then used a variety of F-bombs when she figured out who I was. Yes, that's exactly right.
I didn't get to look at it yesterday. I got to look at that. That's awesome. All right, 61 and sunny and beautiful outside. Expecting a high of 87 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
And the crowd goes nuts. They have no idea that she'll say anything to get their vote, and she'll do anything for power. She's proven that, but the drive-by media won't do their job, and she'll avoid another press conference today. Kamala Harris closed out the DNC last night with the acceptance speech and made the lefties all feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
The path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys. I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self. In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Extremely serious. He plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds.
And so are you. She's flip-flopped on everything and hasn't had that press conference once again in 32 days. 32 freaking days. Here's the former president talking to Fox News after the speech.
She didn't talk about China. She didn't talk about fracking. She didn't talk about crime. She didn't talk about 70% of our people are living in poverty. She didn't talk about housing, really. The trade deficit. She didn't talk about child trafficking that she's allowed to happen because she was the border czar and she presided over the weakest border in the history of our country. It's an invasion.
Keep all the following in mind. This is really good. Have to play it again here. Author Joe Concha on with Hugh this morning.
She hasn't done a press conference in the last 5.5 years since running for president the first time, since being vice president all these years. And people say, well, vice presidents don't get press conferences. I last checked, Mike Pence gave 9 in 2020 alone. And now, obviously, as a candidate. So no press conferences, no tough interviews. This is the strategy. But I think the debate on ABC on September 10th, that is a place where she won't have a teleprompter, won't have pre-scripted remarks, and may have to answer some questions of relevance where that could be the whole ball game right there if Donald Trump plays his cards right and really prepares and is ready for the zingers that she's practicing as we speak.
Jeez, let's hope so.
Blake, I got a question for you. So I'm thinking this through. The strategists behind Kamala Harris have made Kamala likable. That's their goal, right?
Really?
It's 2008. They want to make her likable, not to people like you or me.
True,
because you and I are policy oriented.
Yeah, good
we're
point.
factual. We look at the fact that the Democrats don't deliver on what they promise, and that the country gets worse when they're in leadership. So you and I are already in the conservative camp, but to the uninformed suburban voter, she's their Oprah gal pal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
If they have made Kamala likable, it's important for Republicans to make her unlikable.
Yes.
How do you make Kamala Harris unlikable? Not using facts or policy.
Not using facts or policy.
Because if you use facts and policy, they'd already be over to conservatives.
Wow.
So
make
her unlikable without using facts or policy.
Man, that is a great question. Without taking it to that point where people say, you know, that's what I hate about Republicans. They get so nasty and dirty. That wasn't, that is a great question. So what's the answer?
I don't know. Dude, I've done radio.
Billy
has
has the
I did
answer.
American Family Radio. I couldn't answer that question.
Man,
I hope somebody in Trump's world is sitting here going, how do you make Oprah Winfrey, for instance, which is what they've done. They've Oprah-fied her.
Yes.
And maybe Joshua Sharp has answers to this. We'll ask him in a second.
Without policy, now would you consider the smoking dope and listening to Tupac and whoever, Snoop, is that policy oriented? Because to me, that's unlikable. Where she actually lied about it. Okay, she's with what's his name? She's on the radio and she is trying to look hard or whatever, and said that she smoked pot and listened to Tupac and Snoop Dogg when she was in college. The problem was Snoop Dogg and Tupac hadn't even started their careers at that point.
So
she lied about that.
Kamala type of thing.
Yeah, and
right.
okay, what are you, a dope smoking Lefty from we can't the policy thing. So maybe the pot thing, maybe her voice. I don't know.
I will tell you, there's one angle that should be explored more that isn't. It's just been a little bit explored, but the fact that Doug's a cheater.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. With the nanny,
he slept with the nanny who was his kid's teacher.
Yes.
And everybody knows this.
Yeah, that's true.
You talk about this all the time. Mm-hmm. Once you do that, those people kind of continue to do that. I think she's got a real weakness with Doug, man. I'm sorry.
That's a good point.
I guarantee you that sleeping around did not stop with that teacher.
And he and Walls look like they're brothers, so maybe they could tie something in there. That is a really good question. I'm going to have to think about that. All right, we should find out today if the Federal Reserve plans to cut interest rates next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell will deliver his keynote speech in Jackson, Wyoming today. By the way, RFK Jr. expected to announce today in Phoenix that he's ending his campaign and endorsing Donald J. Trump at a rally in Arizona. The Gultra fire near Golden is fully contained. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says more than 60 firefighters took on the blaze that started Tuesday afternoon. No homes were threatened by the fire, which burned on the north side of Highway 6 near Tunnel 1 in Clear Creek Canyon. It covered about 205 acres. Hey, Keegan Bradley with a one-stroke lead at the BMW Championship at Castle Pines after the first round. The second round today, he's at 6 under. Hideki Matsuyama is at 5 under. 4 players at 4 under. Broncos get ready for their preseason finale against the Cardinals at Empower Field at Mile High. Why did I say Empower Field? It's at Mile High. 58 in Centennial, 59 in Arvada, 61 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue TGIF. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Not much is going to change with our weather here in Denver and along the Front Range through the weekend. We'll continue to have seasonably warm temperatures and afternoon and evening chances for thunderstorms. Mid to upper 80s today, lower 60s tonight, 85 to 90 Saturday, 80s Sunday, cooling to just the 70s and low 80s Monday, with late-day thunderstorms through Monday possible. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your retirement plans with a free review to help provide asset protection, long-term care, or even income for life. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. As they just mentioned, live from the Democrat National Convention. Spent 4 days marching with progressive Palestinian anti-Israeli protesters. Now, Bill, I did not mention to them that I had raised about $1 million to support Israeli lives and save Israeli lives. I just forgot to tell them that. Just kind of,
your mind.
To mention
you had other things that you were doing. Yes,
right.
Totally understandable.
But I kind of feel like I need a cleanse.
Yes.
I want to talk to my Jewish friends. I love the state of Israel. I've traveled to Israel. It's a great place. Being around Jewish people, very nice. They're kind people. There's not an undercurrent of rage, just poised, ready to pounce the minute a Palestinian flag goes by. They're generally very reasonable. Whereas on the other side, it's middle fingers and F-bombs the minute you reveal anything Jewish. So I wanted to bring on my good friend of the show, Joshua Sharf, who's an analyst with the Independence Institute, to kind of confront what happened over this past week with the Democrat National Convention. Joshua, thanks so much for being on the program.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Jeff. And thank you for being out there so that we don't have to.
There was a part of me that really wanted to just grab an Israeli flag and just see what happened.
I don't wade into crowds, but I do actually have I did order a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, an IDF cap that I wear out and about.
Oh,
and
nice!
Like that.
Interesting to see the some of the generational reactions that you get, or the different reactions. I mean, nobody's come up to me and started yelling in my face, which I guess because most people are not crazy.
Yes,
but the crazies, the crazies had the convention outside the convention, so
They were, and these are the types of people that took the time. I'm looking on Fox right now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize some people up there because they're showing some of the guys that were speaking and got arrested and all that stuff. There was some violence, there was some arresting, but nowhere at the level of 1968. Now, here's what I asked a number of these Palestinian protesters. I'm like, I think you wanted the Democrat Party to fully abandon Israel. I don't think they did at this convention. I saw plenty of evidence that they're not willing to stand with Israel the same way Republicans are, but they're not abandoning Israel. As you watch those speeches, you get the same sense that, they're not willing to break with Israel.
I get the sense that they are straddling the line.
Yes.
They are on the way to, they're on the way to a, and we've talked about this before, that they have functionally embraced a new foreign policy when it comes to the region, a new strategy when it comes to the region. They have functionally embraced the idea of Iran as the regional hegemon, the natural regional power that we want to be friends with, and it doesn't really matter who's governing Iran. That's not a nothing we have to worry about. But they are the natural regional power, and if we want to extract ourselves from being in the position of policing the area, then we need to turn it over to somebody else, and the Iranians are just the ticket. And so, and you see a lot of that in this administration. You will see a lot more of it were Harris to get elected, because some of the people that have been tapped as her foreign policy people are 100% on board with that. So what you saw was a lot of talk about, I will always be sure. I mean, and you've seen this since Obama, and surprise, surprise, because he's still calling the shots, right? That they will say, we will absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself, as long as they don't actually exercise it, and then we're going to get upset. And
that's right. That's very insightful.
And so this is what ends up happening. The administration now, I continue to maintain that the naval presence we have there, as it was when the war started, is there as much to deter. Now, they're not going to bomb Israel. That's not obviously the only place that they would go to fight are the Iranians and their proxies. But but it is there to keep the lid on the situation in order functionally to protect that foreign policy approach. That if there's going to be a war, then we have to take Israel's side. If it comes to that, then we have to take Israel's side. So they don't want it to come to that. And that's that I think is, if you listen carefully to the speeches, there was very little talk of the special relationship that we have, the historic, and it's a deeply historical relationship. I mean, Walter Russell Mead has written a whole book about how the U.S. has, or elements in the U.S. I mean, obviously, we're not heavily involved directly as a government in the Middle East in, say, the 1840s, although there was a presence there. In terms of missionaries and so forth, there was a presence there. But that there's always been an element in this country that has been supportive of the what we would now call the Zionist ideal. And that goes back to like Adams. I mean, that goes back even at some level to the Puritan. Of course, Adams comes from the Puritan tradition, right? So, this is not a new thing here, and there's a deep relationship between the two countries that goes far beyond sort of the superficial, and none of them will come anywhere close to addressing that. None of them will ever come close to acknowledging that, because what they're trying to do is ease the party away from that position. So no, they didn't say, well, they didn't throw in the, but they didn't say anything of substance the whole week, right? I mean, the whole week.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
From the platform. From the platform, it was a substance-free convention. Now, Kim Strassel has a fine article in the Wall Street Journal this morning, an op-ed piece about the TV shows, and maybe Chuck Schumer was a little bit more candid on his CNN appearance, and they would go on the chat shows or the talk shows and say a little bit more. But from the platform, it was trying to replicate in some ways 2008, where they didn't want to say anything. They didn't want to tell you what they're going to do.
And well, Josh, they don't need to. You got a big segment of the electorate that if they had already cared about facts and policies, they'd be conservatives. They don't. They care about emotion and feelings and connection with a potential candidate. And man, is it going to feel good to put a woman into office? I mean, it is a lot of what you got in 2008 of this kind of like historic moment type of stuff. Are we judging somebody by the content of their character or what they're able to deliver for the American people or their policies? No. We're judging them on this kind of ethereal notion that this is a moment in history of great triumph in the American tradition as we break the glass ceiling and put a black Indian woman into the presidency. With no exploration of what the policies are actually going to be. And I noticed there was this kind of theme, not only outside the building, but it went inside the building as well, of not being specific. So when I would talk to these Palestinian protesters, where their solution was this kind of allow everybody to live in the Middle East, like in Jerusalem and Israel, just get rid of the Israel state and allow a new state. Oh, okay. Well, who votes in that new state? Well, the Palestinians get to vote. All right. Are they going to protect the rights of the Israelis in this new state? Well,
it's funny.
I don't really know all this stuff, and so you get the same stuff from the main stage of the DNC, right? We're going to bring great hope and peace to this world. All right, how? Well, but we're going to elect the first black woman president. Okay. It's like you go back. It's the same. We're not going to get into the specifics. We're going to just stay ethereal and feel good.
Well, see, this is, and that's the thing, this is not a vote for student council president. There's some real consequences to who we put in the White House.
That's exactly right.
And it's funny, you talk to go back what you're talking about with the street protesters. You say that to them, and yet that's an absolute microcosm of what would go on in the Middle East. The Jonathan Turley had an article, was it in the New York Post? Again, an op-ed. Was it yesterday or the day before, where he was talking about how the Israeli-American coalition wanted, and back in June, had put in for a permit to have their own march, and the Chicago police eventually, basically, they wouldn't allow it. The Chicago government.
I noticed that. That's it. I noticed there were no Jewish counter protests at all.
Yeah, they wouldn't give a permit. Now they slow walked it, and they said, well, you need to. They used bureaucratic means, to shut it down. And so the IAC basically had to. They had on private property put up a display of the hostages.
I visited that. Yep, went into it. Had to go through security. All that powerful display. A lot of artwork.
Well, think about that. I mean, the ostensible reason that they couldn't give the Jewish groups in the IAC a permit was because they wouldn't be able to protect them.
Wow.
Well, right. Jeez. I mean, because it would cause too much trouble. So we know. So there's the asymmetry, and there's the asymmetry right there on the streets of Chicago here in the United States. That the reason that they wouldn't Turley also goes back to the 1978 controversy with the marchers in Skokie when the Klan, or this is the neo-Nazis, I guess, wanted to march in Skokie, which is a Jewish neighborhood. And the Supreme Court said, well, yeah, you can't stop them. As long as they're not breaking windows, you can't stop them. And so basically a few Nazis showed up, and they were outnumbered about 70-1. And something, nobody got hurt, because that's just not, that's just not how people approach things, except for these guys. And so that's, this is something that, so what do they think would happen in the Middle East? Of course we know what would happen. And yet, but it's not about actually for them. It's not really about caring about the Palestinians. It's not really about, caring about having peace over there. It's, it's about hating Israel and hating the United States. They're opposed to settler colonialism, but there's only two countries that they point out. So
yeah. Well, and it actually wraps into a Marxist level thinking, right? So the first day of all these protests was Monday. That was the biggest conglomeration of all things progressive, right? You had LGBTQ, you had abortion, you had environmentalists, you had anti-corporatists, but everything under the banner of we stand with anybody oppressed against the oppressors. And that's kind of the framework that they put everything in. Now, as the marches went on from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it almost became, with the small exception of like a handful of people out of thousands, it became mostly an Islamist protest. And I actually really liked this guy because I like honest people. And there was one guy interviewed. He actually had a sign up. He said, come and ask me questions about Gaza. That's great. I love that, right? I could just walk up with a microphone and be like, tell me what the solution is. The solution was Islamic dominance.
Oh, that's strange.
not just in the Middle East, but globally. He believes, and this is really important, because you got to get to the root of all this, right? You get this sense that they're papering over something. And the reality is, what they want to deliver is, they believe that Islam is the one true religion, and that the world will be better if Islam's in charge. Now, when you start to ask them specifics again, like give me an example of a country where things are going great with Islamic dominance, you get bizarre references to the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century. So
which managed, by the way, to lose. People don't realize this. Which managed, by the way, to lose Istanbul. It lost. I mean, their capital. No, I mean, right. So what do? They pick the worst time for the most decrepit empire. and that's what they say is what they want to look for. Yeah. Okay.
But that's what that's so you go, oh yeah, we don't want the genocide, we don't want the bombing, we don't want the innocent people killed in Palestine, and they use that as a starting point. And every good American doesn't want innocent people to die, right? So it gives you a moment as a protester to get the attention for people to go, oh, okay, I don't want innocent people to die. That sounds terrible. So tell me more. And then they bring you on this journey. The end goal of this journey, you walk down this road, it is Islamic dominance. And I've got one guy to kind of admit to it. Like, that's what they want. And I appreciated the fact of him being honest about it. But that's important for people to understand. When you look at these protests, when you look at what they're trying to achieve, when you look at the end goal, the end of the road, where this journey, if you start to walk with them, ends, it's Islamic dominance.
Oh, there's no, well, yeah. I mean, the red, I don't think I think he's honest about it. I don't think most of the protesters, well, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that I haven't engaged with a whole lot of them, but it's possible that undercurrent is more widespread than I think. But I think there's the red-green alliance, as they say, the alliance between the far left, which is now the left, and the Islamists is overt in Europe. It's It's less overt here, I suppose, but it's a real thing, and people don't realize the degree to which the Islamists have managed to co-opt that movement, to their side. And here we are. It's in this moment where left-wing governments run, the bulk of two of the major, I guess, I guess you would call Macron less left-wing per se, but he's still got his left-wing to worry about, even in his own party. Certainly the Laborites, with this enormous majority they have in Britain, these are substantial, important governments that they've been shifted over to that side. Spain, as well. So we see it here now, and this is actually this goes to a bigger point, which is something that the Democrats want to do, or finalize, I should say, which is the Europeanization of American politics. We have never been. We've always had a federal system. We've always had broadly distributed power. We've always had a sense that you're in a constant negotiation with the other side, even if you have a large majority. And FDR didn't have to negotiate much with Republicans, from 1933 and 1934, in part because there weren't very many in Washington at that point. He just had such a majority, but he did have to negotiate with the southern wing of his party. And so you're in this sort of constant negotiation with the other side. And within parties, there are factions that are negotiating for for what slice of a pie they're going to get within the party. And then there are interest groups within factions that are figuring out where that's going to go. And this constant give and take. Well, there's less of that in Europe, because when you take control of the government, it's everything. And you and in some places where there are by necessity multi-party coalitions, it sort of continues to go on. But in most places, you have a majority, you do what you want. And this is and Chuck Schumer's been quite clear about this. He wants to nuke the filibuster to install sort of structural changes to benefit his party.
Now, Joshua Sharp with the Independence Institute, I got a question for you about the behavior of the protesters and the voters. They keep saying they're not going to vote for Kamala, or they're going to choose Jill Stein, who, as a texter pointed out, is Jewish, which would be an odd vote for them. I
didn't realize that.
I didn't either, and I was like, that's going to be a weird choice. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think they are going to stand by their statement that no, they either won't vote for Kamala or have some sort of a protest vote? Or when, again, we don't have the voting machines, but in the old days, you pull that lever, the curtain closes behind you, the big giant machine sitting in front of you. Are they going to still, despite everything they've said publicly, pull that lever for Kamala? What do you think is going to happen?
I think the 2,500 or so who are there by Thursday are absolutely not going to vote for her. I think they're going to realize they're the hardcore. They're the ones who are not going to vote for her. And I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
I was on the phone. And
tell your son that Papa will be done in a second. Yeah, he'll be done in a second. Yeah. And tell him hi. Everybody from Jeff and Bill Show says hi.
He says, yes. He says, thank you very much for the clock radio. All right. So anyway, it's like that BBC interview, that from the early days of the COVID lockdown, where the guy's from home and the wife is like pulling the children out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I think they will absolutely not vote for her. But the fact is that the protests were smaller than people anticipated. They were less violent than people had anticipated. I mean, you had this blue phalanx that probably outnumbered the protesters. And I think there's that's an indicator that for most of them, they probably figure that Kamala is a pretty good deal, and that's their best bet. And we know that Iran has been funding a lot of this stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that Tehran is calling the shots here, at an operational level, But I think there's a sense that, they pretty much are going to get what they're going to get out of her, and they're not going to do a whole lot better no matter what happens. That she, was willing. She met with the mayor of Dearborn secretly, and that only came out, at the beginning of the week. Didn't make that public. What did become public was her, willingness to talk to people who wanted, pass them off to a staff member, people who wanted a weapons boycott of Israel, and not simply to shut that down. And so, I think there's probably a general understanding, and plus, some of the kids going back to school, it made them less available for this sort of thing. But I think on the whole, most of the people who are out in the street over the end of the school year, and since the war started, are probably just going to make their peace with voting for her, and hope and expect that foreign policy will shift farther in the direction that they want.
I think that's exactly right. Joshua Sharf, analyst with the Independence Institute. Thank you so much for taking time to be with the Jeff and Bill Show. Enjoy your weekend with your family.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, guys, and have a safe trip back.
Oh,
Thank you.
Say hi to your son for us. We appreciate him.
Will do.
Thanks.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
So we'll continue this conversation next. Feel free to give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, about whether or not you think these protesters will move over and support Kamala Harris. I think Joshua's right. Eventually they will. And they have made inroads into the Democratic Party. But I think this is ultimately a suicide pact.
Yeah.
With the Islamists. I mean, guys, it's like the Gays for Gaza, where you're like, I understand you don't like innocent people being killed. Nobody does. But you give these people total control, even though they promise you that things are going to be okay.
Right. You might be one of the innocents being killed next time. It might be your turn in line.
I just think that it's a suicide pact. So
it is.
303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us 720-892-6757. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, broadcasting live from the Democratic National Convention. The 8 o'clock hour, we're going to go inside the DNC and talk with Greg Clugston, a White House correspondent for Salem Media. I want to bring this up just here briefly, Billy. There's a new talking point for the communists.
There is.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that all election long. I'm going to bring out my best Oprah voice. For the communists. So, by the way, I saw a Babylon Bee headline that was like, check under your seat and you'll find an illegal immigrant waiting for you.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It did seem like that celebration. We do have Frank on the phone line, too, that we can get to in a second that wants to talk about how the presentation looked at the DNC and what he saw in it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, that'll be good with Greg Clugston next hour when we go inside the building. With the communists, here's the new talking point for them. Okay.
Yeah.
They have come to understand, at least the ones I talked to, that central planning doesn't work.
Isn't that part of their thing? It's okay.
It was. They're evolving.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I asked them about the attacks on the church that took place under communist regimes, on the family under communist regimes. How about the murdering of your political opponents under communist regimes, right? All that stuff. Oh, boy, Jeff, those were rough years.
Yeah.
Those were rough years in the communist movement.
Yeah.
But we've got a new solution.
Oh. We're going to
What they are now advocating for is the rights of employees to fire their bosses.
Wait.
Collectively.
But you have that ability. You can just leave where you're working. See ya.
But
I'm going this way.
These big corporations that have been built, we had conversations around Walmart, those types of things. These new big corporations have been built.
Yeah.
The boss can always fire the employee. Always just, you walk in one day, you're out. Right?
Yeah.
But what about the reverse? What about the employee's ability to collectively hold their bosses accountable?
I think they're called shareholders.
That's why. Yeah, that is one way.
And the other one is unions. That's the other thing. So they're advocating for greater union membership. Okay, odd play for the communists, and they don't necessarily like that because, so many issues. That's their thing now. They're like, we've decided we're pro-union. Okay.
It was a little bit of a letdown because it was so sweeping under Marx that we're going to reform the entire society. It's like, well, and I always start off my question this way.
Yeah.
You live in the freest land in the world.
Exactly.
You're an American. Why are you a communist?
Yep, exactly.
And it led to some jovial conversations. They weren't quite as hateful as some of them could be, but
that's great.
But yeah, that's their new line. So imagine collectively, you all get together as employees and you get to fire your boss, which to me just seems like it's going to open the door to total chaos.
Yeah.
Total chaos, right?
Did you ask them who gets to hire the next one? Who gets to make that choice?
They do. They're all going to get to vote. Yeah, the employees do, man.
Oh, no. Oh no! It's just got 10 times worse. 10 times worse. This is awful.
More complicated.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right,
horrible.
we're up against the break. We'll continue this conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
wrapping up a fascinating week in Windy City at the Democrat National Convention. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to talk with Greg Clugston about what happened inside the building because I was hanging out in the streets with the peeps. Let's go to the phone lines. Frank Denver, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Frank.
Morning.
Yeah, Jeff, I just wanted to thank you for taking your week off to go back there and be the man on the ground. And you created a visual in my mind when you said that you weren't able to get in, that you were outside with the protesters, but maybe it was the best thing because you're kind of got that skill to hang out with the crowd, and you learn a lot about your opposition just by talking with them and meeting with them. So I think you got a better understanding.
I did, and I'll tell you this, I never felt unsafe the entire time. There's one little moment that got a little mosh pity, but it wasn't, I didn't feel unsafe. And I will say this, I ran into people that, for whatever skewed reason they may have, I believe at the end of the day, they want to make the world a better place. Now, I think they're a little misguided, but I didn't run into evil people.
Well, hopefully that's the case. I think everybody just, the whole world is about survival for everybody, the birds, the bees, the animals, and humans. And I saw this comparator there, though, interestingly enough, and it just applies to the Democratic National Convention, of this fence where you're on the outside. On the inside is their creation of what they call freedom, but it's an artificial world without that fence, because on the outside of that fence is reality. And if you pierce that fence or knock the fence down, then reality starts to conflict with a visual that the Dems have created. And that's going to be their biggest weakness, is meeting reality. And I think that's the best presentation for the conservatives, to present reality or allow her to talk and them to put forth their platform. Unfortunately, that will be limited in the ability to happen. Are either of you guys familiar with a book called The Lessons of History?
No, not at all.
It's a fascinating book by Will and Ariel Durant, D-U-R-A-N-T. You might know those authors. It's a condensation of Will's college thesis down to 100 pages, but it basically says that there's been rises and falls, of course, of institutions before, even democracies, many democracies before, so-called democracies. But they all separate into the haves.
We got about 15 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
Haves and have-nots, the outvote, and then it's followed by a benevolent dictator.
Wow.
So the Lessons of History by Will Durant.
Wow, we'll check that out. Frank, I really appreciate the call. Thanks for the advice. That sounds like a very interesting book we'll have to check out. All right, Greg Clugston, coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. What happened last night inside the DNC? You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Friday, August 23rd. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We've been spending this week broadcasting live from Chicago in the beautiful Salem studios here. By the way, everybody's great here. Everybody. From the office manager team to the producers to the executive operations director to the other hosts here, had a great time being part of the Salem family here in Chicago, Illinois. Great that we could come in here and they give us the studio space, have a lot of fun. So I especially want to thank them. And George, our producer, has been doing an awesome job.
That is
fun
really
guy
awesome
to hang out with.
Yeah, we appreciate George. Now, I'm hoping that we talked off air earlier this week. I'm hoping you're able to execute our plan because I've been watching you on the YouTubes and the Rumbles and stuff.
You know?
And there's a table behind you and there's a little tiny picture frame. If you didn't switch out the picture in that frame to us, I'm severely disappointed. Just to leave them a memento because it would take them months to realize that the picture's changed. That no
Do you
one
have
would
a color
notice.
printer, George? Do you have a color printer? We can
There's
pull that
actually a long history of why that's not really allowed here.
What? See,
so
again,
we used to very
Yeah.
slowly. So many years ago, we had a afternoon show here. It's a former congressman, now current MSNBC foolhardy, Joe Walsh, and he had a producer named Brian. And Brian went around taking his headshots and replacing literally every photo in every frame of the station with Joe Walsh's headshot for almost a year before anyone noticed. So
Brian's my favorite now. and again, George, this is why in the relationship, I'm the one that gets us in trouble. Always, always, always. I am the problem child in the Salem family. Yes, that is
Brian's
me.
the kind of guy you want at every barbecue.
Exactly.
You never want to work with him.
Hey, wait, hang on a sec. That hurt. No, I'm kidding.
So great time. And just in a second, we're going to tap into the Salem family here for analysis from within inside the building. As Greg Clugston, White House correspondent for the Salem Media Network, gives us the great detailed review of what happened last night at the pinnacle night. Kamala Harris coronated as the new Queen of America and your gal pal. So we'll talk more about all of that after the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy and George. I think they're in Chicago. 65 and partly cloudy and beautiful outside, expecting a high of 87 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story: 2 trains collided on Thursday night in Boulder, leaving 2 conductors injured. The collision caused a fuel leak. Police said that the 2 conductors suffered minor injuries and are expected to recover. Authorities have not made it clear what caused the collision to happen, but said a rail bridge was destroyed.
The path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys.
Oh, Kamala Harris closed out the DNC last night with the acceptance speech, and the Democrats reintroduced themselves to the American flag and patriotism, saying all the right things, but talk is cheap, and we know Harris's record. Will that matter? Are there enough low information voters who say historic this and historic that? Straddled the fence last night on Israel. Kamala Harris.
Now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
Kamala.
And let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost.
Of what they did to
Desperate,
Israel.
hungry people fleeing for safety over and over Again, the scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom.
Oh, and they went nuts. They love that. Jennifer Williams is a Colorado delegate and is in Chicago for the Love Fest.
Incredible and historic. She is truly a transformational candidate, and we have got to beat Donald Trump to save our republic.
Wow, Jennifer. Okay. Analyst Joshua Sharf, Independence Institute, on with Jeff and Billy last hour, put the convention in a nutshell.
It was a substance-free convention. Now, from the platform, it was, it was trying to replicate in some ways 2008.
Yep. RFK Jr. expected to announce today in Phoenix that he's ending his campaign and endorsing former President Donald J. Trump at a rally today in Arizona. Trump said he would consider giving RFK Jr. a role in his administration. Last night, Trump on Kamala Khan's speech.
All of these things that she talked about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do everything. But she didn't do any of it. She could have done it 3.5 years ago. She could do it tonight by leaving the auditorium and going to Washington, D.C. and closing the border. She doesn't need a bill. I didn't have a bill. I closed the border and created the safest border we've ever had in the history of our country. She could have done all of these things, and she could still do them. She's got 4.5, 5 months left. She can go there right now. She can do all of the things, many of the things that she's talking about and complaining about.
And she won't. Correction, on Thursday, I said there were 30,000 kids missing who crossed the southern border. It's actually 300,000 children that the borders are. Commander of Chaos, Kamala Khan, is in charge of, and no one holds her accountable for what has happened with the children on the southern border. Well, we should find out today if the Federal Reserve plans to cut interest rates next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell will deliver his keynote speech at beautiful Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the Economic Symposium in Northwest Wyoming. The Gulcher of Fire near Golden is fully contained. Todd Chamberlain says he's uniquely qualified to lead the Aurora Police Department. The former LA Police Department commander was introduced as Aurora's new police chief Thursday. If he's confirmed by a majority of the department, he'd be the city's fourth chief since Vanessa Wilson was forced out in 2022. Keegan Bradley with a one-stroke lead at the BMW Championship at Castle Pines, second round today. He's at 6 under. Broncos get ready for the Cardinals at Mile High on Sunday in the preseason finale. 63 in Parker, 62 in Lakewood, 65 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. TGIF. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Not much is going to change with our weather here in Denver and along the Front Range through the weekend. We'll continue to have seasonably warm temperatures and afternoon and evening chances for thunderstorms. Mid to upper 80s today, lower 60s tonight, 85 to 90 Saturday, 80s Sunday, cooling to just the 70s and low 80s Monday, with late-day thunderstorms through Monday possible. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your retirement plans with a free review to help provide asset protection, long-term care, or even income for life. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. Meteorologist Don Day on the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Over the past week, during the 8 o'clock hour, we've heard from Greg Clugston, White House news correspondent for the Salem Media Network, about what was happening inside the building. He's done a fantastic job giving our listeners insight, describing the atmosphere, and analyzing the speeches. Doing a fantastic job as a reporter for us. He joins us for his final report on what happened last night during the Democrat National Convention. Greg, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for the invite to be back. It's been a great week being with you.
So last night, big night, the penultimate, the pinnacle, Kamala Harris ordained, crowned on the main stage. She delivered probably the biggest speech of her life. Give us a sense of what it was like in the room.
Yeah, I mean, even just getting inside the United Center in the afternoon, the crowds were getting there earlier yesterday. And when you got into the arena, I mean, I've covered a lot of these events, and there's always a building crescendo throughout the week, for the, as you just said, the pinnacle, the final night of the week. And that was exactly the atmosphere inside the building. There was a noticeable buzz. There was just more chatter. People had filled up to the upper bowl seats of the arena much earlier last night than they did. Of course, all of it in anticipation of the final night. I have to say that there were rumors right up until about an hour before Kamala Harris gave her speech that Beyonce was going to be in the building performing live. I mean, TMZ reported that they had confirmed, yes, that came like an hour before the speech, and people just, I mean, it didn't materialize. But I mean, I think the roof of the United Center would have blown off if Beyonce actually had walked onto the stage. But in any case, it was the end of the party for the Democratic, for the party, the end of the convention party, that is. And, in terms of the speech, it was well delivered. It was 35 to 40 minutes long. They were running mostly on time last night. When you talk about conventions, whether it's a Republican convention or a Democratic convention, they typically are not detail heavy on policy. Now, that obviously is one big criticism of the Harris campaign. She doesn't have a policy page on her website. She hasn't sat down for a one-on-one news interview. She hasn't held a formal news conference over the last 4 or 5 weeks since going to the top of the ticket. So there are certainly some outstanding questions there. But in terms of the broad theme of what the party organizers and her campaign were trying to accomplish, it was all put to the test last night. And there was a lot of excitement. It was an expected end to the convention in terms of just kind of the exuberance that people were talking about as they came in on Monday.
Talking with Greg Clugston, White House news correspondent for the Salem Media Group. Now, I actually took some time to go back and listen to her 2020 vice presidential address at the Democratic National Convention. A little bit of an overlap, because the candidate has to introduce themselves to a lot of people, right? And you got the conversation from Kamala about her mom, the journey there, where she grew up, all that. They have to spend time talking to people that don't normally pay attention to politics. Why is that important for a candidate to get personal in their biography?
Yeah, and we see this and have seen this for years and years, especially in modern politics. And you often hear the politically based question, who would you rather have a beer with or be in a backyard barbecue with when you're looking at a couple of candidates? It's because voters do want to be able to feel like they can relate to politicians, to the people that they're potentially going to be casting their vote for. So when you can go and share your upbringing, the town that you grew up in, you talk about your family members, you talk about the challenges and all that you perhaps overcame in your growing up years. But that's what we saw at the very beginning, essentially last night of the Harris speech, talking about her personal background. And then she shifted into her professional career as a prosecutor and then ended up being in the White House. So she made that progression there to kind of show her professional and her personal side, to sort of give us a glimpse into, what her vision is or what she values. And that is important to voters as they're trying to weigh this election, because even though there has been a tightening of the poll numbers over the last few months or last few weeks, this is a very, very divided country. It's a very close contest going forward here for the next 11 or 12 weeks.
Now, one of the areas that I thought was a very serious potential weakness for Kamala Harris was her inability to take on some of the more serious threats to this nation, right? From Russia, China. During the Spaces conversation that took place between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they talked about you got to have a leader, right? This is the chief executive of the United States of America that can go toe to toe with Vladimir Putin or leaders from China, North Korea, Iran, and make them feel intimidated, right? And last night she addressed that. She had to go after that critique that she could hold her own against our foreign adversaries. Did you catch that moment?
Yeah, I mean, she said that she would not cozy up to tyrants and dictators. I think maybe that's the portion that you're referring to.
Yeah,
and she was obviously tying, Donald Trump and his past, outreach to Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And she mentioned those leaders by names and said that they essentially, those dictators, those tyrants, are rooting for Donald Trump's victory. That was her claim last night. And then she also wove that into her strong defense of having the United States be a key ally with NATO and other allies around the country, and then talking about maintaining and building the strong and lethal military force of the United States military. So she doubled down on that, and I think you're right, in part because there are some serious questions about her handling of those foreign policy and national security issues.
So I know she's not fully in the camp, but I'll be honest, when I was listening to her go, we've got to have the strongest military out there. We need to advance democracy throughout the world. We need to stand up to the dictators, and we're going to stand with Israel. She gave a little bit of an acknowledgement of the Palestinian issue, but she was very clear that she was going to continue to stand with Israel. I kind of sat there and I went, this kind of reminds me of George Bush in 2020. I would be hard pressed to figure out a policy difference between Kamala Harris in 2024 and George Bush in 2020 and 2000 when you're talking strongest military in the world, advancing democracy abroad, standing up to our dictators and supporting Israel. I'm like, well, that sounds almost neoconish. What do you think?
Yeah, no, just as you laid out just now, those were key elements of the George W. Bush foreign policy approach. Absolutely. Yeah. And it is interesting. I mean, look, there's no question that Kamala Harris has a history of being a liberal senator in the United States Senate. And she has embraced a lot of stances and policies that are very left of center. There's no question about that. At this point, obviously, and we see candidates of all stripes do this, they often will moderate their position or their policy approach on certain things, and we're seeing that. I mean, it's a part of the political process, whether you like it or not, and we are seeing that here over these last number of weeks. And so, with the party convention over, and you have to look at it, all conventions are basically a 4-day TV commercial produced by the campaign. And that's what we've just witnessed here in Chicago. Now it's back to the kind of the more nitty gritty. We've got a debate coming up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be very fascinating to watch. And then also questions about, is she going to engage with the press? Is she going to be more forthcoming on policy details? So the real hard work is really just getting underway, even though there's a lot of euphoria here as the Democrats leave Chicago.
Greg Clugston, White House news correspondent with Salem Media, joining Jeff and Bill live. Sure do appreciate all the time that you've given us this week. Curious about some of the feelings and emotion inside the room. Joshua Sharf, analyst with Independence Institute, joined us last hour, and he talked about it being light on policy, but heavy on vibes. With the people wandering and milling about, did you get that feeling as well that this was a vibe convention, that there weren't many breakout sessions about, well, how do we deal with economic policy here? How do we deal with this? Were there any conversations or anybody that you ran across at the DNC that was like, wow, this feels good, but I want to get more policy because I'm of the opinion, I don't think the Dems are looking for policy. I think they're looking for vibes. What do you think?
Well, yeah, the vibes were very much present this week. There's no getting around that or doubting that. And you couldn't help but think at any point during this week, but especially last night, before leading up to and including Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, if Joe Biden had not dropped out, what would the vibes of the convention have been? So you have to think about what the alternative would have been, which was a reality, 5 weeks ago, of Joe Biden being at the top of the ticket. And it would have been just an incredibly different atmosphere inside the convention hall. So yes, vibes have been really a part of this, 4.5, 5 week campaign so far. For Kamala Harris, in terms of whether delegates and others are wanting more policy and breakout sessions. I mean, obviously they had different caucus meetings and things throughout the week in the mornings and the evenings, but it's essentially been more of a pep rally atmosphere all week long. Really generating the enthusiasm, and there were glimpses of it. I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but I know like during the Michelle and Barack Obama speeches. And even Bill Clinton mentioned this a little bit too. They were injecting a little dose of reality, saying, "Hey, look, this is still a very close race in this country, and there are no assurances here." And so they were really kind of putting out the urgent call to say, "There's got to be a lot of work here ahead," and that may include being more specific on policy issues going forward.
Talking with Greg Clugston, White House correspondent for the Salem Media Group. All right, so now you mentioned we go to the nitty gritty, where you've got debates coming up. We've got, maybe press conferences that come up. I'll be honest, I'm not so sure that Kamala Harris has to do much press conferences. Now, you're an actual reporter. You've been correspondent. I imagine you're in those briefing rooms where the questions get asked and all that stuff. I don't know. Do you think that Kamala's going to have to do those? I think the media will provide a lot of cover for her, and it seems like people feel pretty good about her. Why go out and subjugate herself to questions from people like Greg Clugston?
It's definitely a political strategy by her campaign for what they've done here the last 4 or 5 weeks. How much longer they can go without it? I mean, for one thing, if you do actually sit down with, do a one-on-one news interview or hold a more formal press conference, it's kind of a good bad scenario potentially for the campaign. One is that you can remove the attack line from Trump and Republicans who have been saying, "Hey, you're not sitting down and talking to the press." So when you do sit down and talk to the press, that attack line then gets muted. At the same time, what is the performance? What is the result of that sit-down interview or press conference? Was it positive for your candidate? And so that's what campaigns have to think about. So it's been a more risk-averse approach so far for the Kamala Harris campaign. But you do wonder if she can continue. I go back to 2020 and go back to 2016, and Hillary Clinton went something like 200 plus days of not talking formally to the press.
Really? Wow.
Which was remarkable. And of course, there was, circumstances were different in that election, but it was clearly a strategy for her and her campaign at that point too. I don't think they're going to quite go that long with Kamala Harris, but there doesn't seem to be a rush to doing something. The only hint that she has said is that she would have by the end of August something they hope to have scheduled for an interview. Now that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the interview is going to take place by the end of the month, but maybe maybe they're looking forward to next year or something.
Yeah, there's scheduled something in February. Yeah,
it's one thing to get a job without being specific on how you're going to perform in the job. It's another thing to be the president of the United States and get that job without being specific or having to answer any tough questions. That's just amazing to me. So,
I want that job interview.
What does your schedule look like? Give us a little sense, an insight into what it means to be the White House news correspondent for Salem Media over the next 70 days or so.
Well, there will be travel involved, and like over the past, even going back to last year during some of the GOP presidential primary debates, I was at a couple of those debates providing coverage for our network. And then it was at the RNC in Milwaukee a month ago, as you know, here in Chicago. I will be in New York, in Philadelphia for the September 10 debate between Trump and Harris. There's also a scheduled debate for the vice presidential nominees coming up at the end of September, early October, and that's to take place in New York. And so I'll be attending that debate coverage as well. So it'll be going forward with the major events. The Harris campaign has said that they're going to wait until after the September 10 face-off with Trump before committing to a possible second or additional debates.
Yeah, they're not sure if he's going to be in prison because his sentencing's on September 18th. Now, Billy,
18th. Yeah.
You and Greg have been working on
we were
analysis.
talking about something. Yeah, there was something there. And I know, Greg, first I want to talk about the idea. We talked about at the RNC, political cosplay. What has been the best outfit, the best thing you've seen sported by a Dem wandering around the convention so far? What's the thing that has caught your eye? And then we'll go into how much free stuff the Dems are giving you. But first, what's the cosplay look like?
Okay, I want to do a follow-up. I think on Monday you were asking me a little bit about this, and I mentioned the Washington State delegation had these blinking cowboy hats. And I acknowledge that, Washington State, not really known for the cowboy theme, but I later learned that the delegation was doing this as a nod to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter Country album. And they had actually, along with those blinking hats, they had sashes that said not Cowboy Carter, the name of the Beyonce album, but Cowboy Kamala. So they were tying into the Beyonce theme. So that was it. I saw some women wearing Hotties for Harris t-shirts. And there was even a Hotties for Harris dance party reception. I think it was either Tuesday night or Wednesday night after the evening session.
Oh wow, that's Greg, yeah.
Greg, do you want to provide any analysis as to whether or not they lived up to the term being a hottie for Harris, or would you like to remain neutral in this type of reporting situation?
I'll leave that to talk show hosts and opinion commentators to make that determination.
That's why we love you.
Smart man.
Now, of course, you were at the DNC. We know the Democrats love the idea of giving the people the free stuff. We live in very blue state, and they're always talking about the stuff they need to give us. They're always giving this and giving that. And so what's the best swag? I'm assuming the Dems laid out an amazing spread. I mean, Oprah was there. Did you get a car? Did you get a beachfront condo? Cartier watch? What's the swag you got at the DNC? What free stuff?
Well, what's interesting is in past conventions, even members of the news media have often received kind of like a little gift bag. It's not really quite a swag bag, but sometimes there's a T-shirt. There have been like commemorative boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese, and that has been like a decades-old tradition. And they make special customized boxes for each convention. I think the Kraft company has stopped doing that. So you get all kinds of good. You might get coffee mugs. You might get even little accessories, like adapters and plugs for your electronic devices and iPhones, and little gadgets like that, electronic gadgets. And I have to say that both the Republican and the Democratic parties provided nothing for news media. Now, obviously, nobody's going to be crying for reporters not getting a free bag of stuff. I understand that. I did see that there were grab bags, pictured online, and other people carrying them around who were delegates. I don't know what the contents were, unfortunately, of those swag bags, but I do think the delegates in particular did receive some goodies from the DNC.
See, this is where your morals and ethics get in the way. You didn't take one of those bags, but we appreciate you for that one. Now, let's talk about the idea that the Democrats also will lean into capitalism as much as they decry it. What was the best merch that was for sale there? What did you see them trying to make the money at the convention from the people who like to give away the free money? What did you see?
You've got your typical, range of T-shirts and hats and buttons. We did see a lot of people wearing custom jackets. They weren't necessarily purchased, like they would have maybe customized themselves with stitched messaging on the back and that kind of thing. there were a lot of bracelets, nothing super fancy, not like jewelry, but, and this is a big thing at conventions and even like youth gatherings and things not related to politics, where a lot of the delegations, coming from different parts of the country will trade their bracelets. So you might come with a bag or a handful of things from Colorado and trade a bunch of your Colorado bracelets and get corresponding bracelets from other states. So there's a lot of this trading going on in the hallways and concourses at the United Center, which is kind of interesting to watch. There obviously were a lot of rainbow and LGBTQ designs on T-shirts and hats and you name it. I saw one delegate walking by. He had a hat on with two Christmas ornaments. One was a Christmas ornament of Kamala Harris and one was of Tim Walz.
Oh, wow. That's early, man.
And there were also rainbow-colored Nancy Pelosi sweatbands that were spotted around the building as well. Wow. Like the old-style sweatbands that, you saw NBA players wearing back in the 1970s.
Like Richard Simmons, too. Same thing, yeah. Wow,
and Richard Simmons.
You think NBA, I think Richard Simmons. Oh, thank you so much, Greg Clugston, White House national correspondent for Salem Media. We sure appreciate you giving us the flavor inside. You've done an incredible job this week. Really hope you get some time off this weekend before they shoot you out of a cannon. You're headed in a different direction next week, but hopefully we'll catch up with you soon, man.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys. I hope you have a great weekend too. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, we could get some updates from him on the debates would be fascinating. So we got to remember to do that, Billy. That would be great. It is fascinating to me how issues move from the outside to the inside of the building, right? You can imagine 25, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of demonstrations outside the building with rainbow flags. Yeah. Now rainbow flags are inside.
That's interesting.
Demonstrations outside around Palestinian flags. Well, they want to be inside the building. So will those Palestinian flags move inside? I think they will eventually. They seem to be pretty optimistic outside that the Democrats are paying more attention to their cause. And just hearing Greg talk about the bountiful plenty of rainbow flags happening inside and merch happening inside the DNC makes me think that's what your goal.
I love the fact that it's merch. They've capitalized on it. They've done, and I mean by capitalism, they've gone in there selling. They're not going to hand it out to you. They're still going to make the money, even though they talk about giving away all the free stuff. I think that's really ironic that they leaned into it. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to a comment from one of our listeners early on this week that the walls were high and the hypocrisy was thick at the Democrat National Convention.
That is good.
All right. Look, if you're considering selling your home, go with the team that's not only going to give you top level service, but will also help you earn more from the sale of your home than any other agent. Gay Ribble has proven to get more for her sellers because they have ready buyers looking for a home in your area. They don't just make this claim. They can sit down and actually show you their list of over 14,700 buyers. This gives you an immediate advantage. Sure, you can hire any agent to sell your home, but isn't it all about how much you put in your pocket after closing? The Empower Home team specializes in making sure you make the most amount of money. They will sell your home at your price, or Gay will buy it, guaranteed. Reach out to my friends and realtors at Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams by calling 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, or go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com. We'll continue with your calls and texts. Phone lines open, 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Jeff and Bill show about 8:39 on this Friday, August 23rd. Happy Friday to all you out there. Billy, I appreciate the food out here, but there's a diner.
Yes, they're letting us in public.
Douglas County, Parker, we're going to be hanging out with on Tuesday. Man, my stomach. I'm so looking forward to that.
Tell you, I've got something that both of us are going to have to look forward to now. I want all of our listeners come out with us. Doug's Diner, we're hanging there next Tuesday. It's the one in Parker. They have a number of locations. We're going to be the one at Parker, 18595 East Main Street. Basically, it's just between Parker Road and 20 Mile. North side of the street, lots of parking, easy to find. And we want you to come out there because in the next hour, we're going to be talking to the manager out at the store about some special menu items. Lindsay Marsh is going to be joining us. And I've got to ask her about, Mark, the sales guy that works here. He said he's been there a number of times and he's given us the inside scoop, Jeff and I. He says you have to try the spicy Reuben. And I want to ask Lindsay about what they do, how is it spicy, and how's this crafted. And the reason I want to know this is the Reuben was a sandwich that my dad was always after. And he did this thing about having the tour of Denver, going around trying to find the best Reuben. That was kind of the thing that he did. And I fell in love with the Reuben sandwich as a kid as well. So I want to figure out what is the secret to their spicy Reuben, because Mark wouldn't tell me. He says they do something different with their Reuben than anybody else, and it elevates it to a next level and makes it kind of have its own Colorado twist. So I'm curious what they do. But again, come out with us. They've got eggs. They've got the huevos rancheros. They have variations of that as well. They have breakfast enchiladas. They've got quesadillas. They have a menu item on there that is just like a mound of hash browns. They put a whole bunch of their stuff in it, and you can choose how you want that thing accented. And then, of course, they go with the hotcakes and the crepes as well. And they do everything locally sourced. It's all natural ingredients because they want to help the Colorado community. They want to make sure that when they're buying the best ingredients, they also are paying Colorado farmers, the men and women that do the hard work in order to produce the stuff that goes on the plate. All the stuff made from scratch. It's going to be absolutely delicious. Mark's laughing at me about the Reuben. He said he's not telling me the secret. I'm a little mad at him right now. He's back there. So we're going to find it out from Lindsay, but come on out with us. We're going to be broadcasting live and having breakfast with you. We'll take pictures. We'll spend time with you, but come see us. We're going to be at Doug's Diner on Tuesday, 18595 East Main Street between Parker and 20 Mile on the north side of the road. Hope to see you there. I'm so hungry.
Billy, that sounds great. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm so excited.
So yesterday was very serious. The day before, all 4 days of these protests, very serious. But every once in a while, a gem emerges that brings the level of crazy down a little bit. And it's universally embraced.
Yes.
One of these guys showed up in a wizard outfit yesterday,
so funny.
And he got a hold of the microphone during these pro-Palestinian chants and helped people remember what we should be really fighting for. Billy, can you play that clip?
Free! 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 When I say zombie, you say power! Zombie! 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 When I say time, you say travel! When I say mandatory, you say toothbrushing. Mandatory. 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 When I say free, you say Palestine. Free. 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 What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Where do we get it? Now. What are we going to do once we get it? Where am I supposed to get any of this? Does anybody have some right now? Okay, thank you very much. Great. Have a nice night. Keep on chanting. Keep on fighting.
So
He's my hero.
That's about 9 o'clock. We've been marching for 4 or 5 hours. We've had to deal with police. There's all this activity taking place, and people are frustrated, exhausted. It's the end of the week. And that brilliant human being showed up to provide a little levity, no curse words, just some really funny things like mandatory toothbrushing, and the free ponies.
And they started chanting it. And justice, where do we get it? What do we do once we get it?
And if there was a better example of what I think Bill would be like at a serious rally, It was the wizard that showed up last night.
That is absolutely what I would lean into. That is absolutely what I would try to do. It's like they're just chanting whatever anybody says. Let's see if we can play with this. Let's see if we can make this go. Oh, here's my hero.
You just kind of fall into it.
Yeah.
So I was even sitting there. I spent 4 days with these people in a constant drum beat, and then they're going, from the river, and you're just like, dun, dun, dun. From the nope, shouldn't be saying that.
No.
So you have this natural desire to like just join right in with what they're doing. And he capitalized on that. And then the funny thing was he literally disappeared back into the crowd like that Homer Simpson meme where he just goes into the bush.
He did. You've got video of it.
I never saw him at any other point. Never saw him before, never saw him after, but he came and led a chant about zombie power, and everybody joined him in yelling zombie power.
It was great. Oh, I love it. And his hat was the best. His little tall wizard hat thing was so fantastic.
He's wearing a tall little wizard hat. I posted that on our X account. If you go to x.com/Jeff Hunt,
that's
you can
definitely
see
worth a share.
ours little
Got to see that and share it with your friends and family. Because you got to say, here are the protesters. Here are the real protesters there at the DNC. That's kind of work that Jeff did. It's fantastic.
So, Billy, give us a little update on how you're doing with Balanced Well Space.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so glad that you asked because you're in Chicago, my friend. You haven't seen my brand new accessory. Yesterday at Balanced Well Space, I was fitted for my knee brace. Okay, here's the deal. Balanced Well Space is an amazing team of medical professionals that are fixing so many things that are wrong with me. Sadly, not psychologists. However, it's the physical stuff we're talking about. They are an amazing team that does neuropathy. They do chiropractic care. They do physical rehabilitation, wave therapy, regenerative care, trigger point injections. There's a long, long list I don't have time for right now, plus a lot of cutting edge advanced modalities. But here's the secret. It's all under one roof. You don't have to spend your time going from office to office to office, taking all that extra drive time, getting stuck in traffic, getting out in the hot weather. It's a one-stop location. They're located in Lowry, brand new offices right across from Hangar 2. Plenty of parking. You know me. I like the shady trees. I parked at the back of the parking lot yesterday because that's where the shady tree was. That was the spot that was open. And of course, came outside. My car's nice and cool. That's what I'm looking for. And it's a fantastic team. And here's what they do. You go and you see them, and they go to work. They take a look at you. They see what hurts. They do some manipulation, some poking, some prodding. They take the pictures. They do the x-rays. And then they talk to you about what you're feeling right now and then how you're constraining your life. What are the things that you want to do that you're not doing anymore because of the pain and suffering that you're in on a daily basis? They then set up a custom plan that is tailored to your needs, your goals, your desires, and your pain. Then they take care of you. In that one office, you get everything taken care of, manipulated, and it will change from visit to visit. But it's a one-stop shop. You go, Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess, you see B, you see Sarah, and they take care of all the pain. Yesterday, they put the knee brace on me. We had to get it fitted, and it's really, really cool. My knee, because I have a torn meniscus, my tibia and fibia are not lining up with my femur anymore. It's off center, and it's causing a ton of knee pain and weakness. If I kept walking on this thing, I'm going to need surgery eventually. I'm avoiding that because they fitted me with a knee brace that is going to realign that tibia fibia, but most importantly, it is also at the same time decompressing my knee, pulling my knee joint apart so that we can get in there and take care of the meniscus again without surgery. So this is the next step in my care, and we're just doing it yesterday. So you come out Tuesday, see us at Doug's Diner, and you can see my fancy new knee brace. It is amazing. I'm already feeling better because applying stability that I did not have before. That's what they can do. It's absolutely incredible, and I want them to be able to take away your pain like they're taking away mine. If you've got neuropathy, you don't have to live with it. What they can do with neuropathy is nothing short of remarkable. I was talking to another person in the office yesterday that was getting the neuropathy treatment, and she said what they've been able to do is crazy because she was always in pain walking everywhere. Now it's not like that anymore. She said it's remarkable. She's going up and down the stairs. It's amazing. So I want you to check out balancewellspace.com. balancewellspace.com, because I want the team to talk to you, get together, and take care of your pain. I want them to make the difference in your life that they are making in mine. Go talk to Dr. Julie, Dr. Chess, have them take care of you. You don't have to live in pain. It doesn't have to be this way. Check them out. balancewellspace.com. balancewellspace.com.
Great to hear that, Billy, and glad that people could see that new knee brace. Dude, on
like
Tuesday.
A superpower, man. It's
good stuff.
So cool.
Right. We'll continue. By the way, coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to talk with the manager of Doug's Diner, Lindsay Marsh. So you're not going to want to miss that conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
having a great time in the Windy City. And it just goes to prove that if you want to protect something, if you really love it, you protect it with high walls and lots of police, which is what they did, which is why you didn't end up with 1968 anymore. So in any of the riots, it was actually a very nice, safe, enjoyable city. It's kind of like what Polis did when the All-Star game was here.
Yeah, exactly. Just clean it all up.
And San Francisco did with when China was coming to San Francisco. They claim. And I just raised the question: why don't you do that all the time? Is this just a matter of resources?
Yeah,
it's just because of the police. But why not make it a great city all the time?
Exactly.
So, all right, we'll continue this conversation and more about Jared Polis. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
In the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Billy Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Broadcasting this week from the Democratic National Convention. I got to tell you, Billy, nobody else did it as good as we did. I'm sorry. We know there's some other radio stations here, some other news stations. They all hung out inside with, the famous people. But and while we did have great coverage from within side, we were out on the streets.
Yeah. Who else brought you the protest wizard? We just last hour.
Exactly.
Who else got you the protest wizard? Only Jeff Hunt. And the thing is, everybody else was doing the same interviews. Name changed, but sure, it was the same interview. They're on Radio Row, and everybody walks by and you get the PR fluff. No, we knew that Greg Clugston from Salem was going to handle that for us on the inside. So that freed Jeff up to go out and give you the more interesting stories, to really give you the flavor of what it's like there at the DNC.
I spoke with the Palestinians, the communists, the socialists, the feminists, the LGBTQ, the abortionists, a handful of Christians.
The queers for Gaza.
The queers for Gaza.
Wow.
The has like super ultra Orthodox Jews that actually oppose Zionism. That's an interesting conversation in itself. So we were out there with the people. We got a flavor of the melting pot that is American politics, and everybody advocating for their own issues and their, this vision of the world, that vision of the world. Communists coming to terms with the idea that central planning doesn't work, but they've rebranded, baby.
Pro-union.
We've got some new ideas for you. Yes, employees can band together to fire their bosses now. That's the latest thing that they want to bring in.
Now, here's the thing with that, Jeff, is, okay, they've had some time. They've been able to re-examine their message and how they can come to America and sell communism, because that's what they want. And their solution is a weird union thing. That's the best thing that was on the whiteboard.
It's a weird union. And then they went one step further where I'm like, I go to this guy, I go, dude, come on.
Yeah, come on.
What's wrong? What's wrong with an artist, for instance, coming up with art that is just awesome and a lot of people want to buy it?
Yeah. Why is that a bad thing?
And that artist, he or she can make a ton of money and buy a nice car. What's wrong with living in that world, man? Why do you want to take away and make that artist operate in a grain field, because of some central planning? Why don't you just let that? And they go into these weird worlds that just don't exist. And so it's kind of hard to follow them. But
why can't someone succeed based on the merit of their talent and abilities?
Right.
Why is that the constriction that they want?
I don't care. And I've often said this, you can critique Amazon as much as you want. I was like, Jeff Bezos got toilet paper to my front door. Yes. I grew up in a world where I didn't have to do that. So that guy figured it out and lives on a yacht. Yeah. I don't care. I get toilet paper delivered to my front door.
Yep.
What's wrong with that? So anyways, the guy goes, Jeff, can you imagine? And he kind of went into this like John Lennon. And Billy, to your point, this show has helped me have really great conversations that don't really get heated, which is nice. So you can go deep into stuff and people aren't like, I never got hit. Okay. Although I think maybe the gays for Gaza thought about hitting me. But we had this great conversation. He goes, Jeff, just imagine a world where everything's provided for you and you can pursue the hobbies, gifts, and talents you want without having to worry about getting up to go to work in the morning. And so you're just like, okay, I can't, like, that's heaven. That's not this earth. We're never going to be able to create that.
That's exactly what I thought, my friend. I'm like, that's heaven. Yes, that's heaven. That's why we're suffering here in order to get there. That's the point.
At some point, food's just going to be provided for you.
Yeah.
Mass transit's going to be provided for you. Somebody has to go drive the train, but
and who's growing the food?
Exactly. We never got into that. I guess maybe people that really love to grow food, but I don't think there's a lot of them. I don't think there's enough of them to be able to do that.
We have farmers. You and I both know farmers very well. That's hard work. Yes, it's their passion, but it's hard work. And if you said, hey, you're not going to be able to make money on this, the government's just going to send you a check every week, it takes away the incentive for
the government doesn't even send you a check. You
just do it.
Other food shows up.
Why would you have the incentive to have the best food? Why would you ever try to make sure that all of your crops were delivered just out of the goodness of your heart? It just... Wow, it's almost as if the communist is like, have you met the people? Have you been out in the public? Have you gone outside and touched grass a little bit? Have you met some of the people here?
And that's exactly where my mind went too. I was like, have you ever met a middle school boy or a teenage boy? Yeah, and he was like, Jeff, do you realize what happens when we mod video games. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But he explained it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's like, someone makes the video game and then I guess releases the code and everybody modifies it and makes it a better video game.
Yeah. They put extra skins. You can change things inside of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's his vision, is like, what's going to happen is food just shows up and you're going to be able to unlimitedly mod video games as much as you want to your passion, and the world will be a great place.
Wow.
So I don't know, Bill, does that sound like it kind of sounds nice to me. I don't have to get up and go to work, but I just don't think it all comes together at the end of the day.
Yeah, the issue is it's the idea that we would, and this is the weird part about it, is that that where this falls apart is that naturally the assumption by the communists you're talking to is that we would all pursue a multitude of passions so that the needs would be taken care of, rather than a short white guy like me saying, my passion is to start in the NBA, I'm playing. Wait, hang on a second. I don't have the talent, the skill, or the height to do that. But my passion is to go and do that. So I probably should be instead driving that truck and delivering the food to people's houses. That's not my passion. So whose passion is it to get in the truck and deliver the stuff? Whose passion is it? Whose passion is it to clean the public restrooms? Whose passion is that? I want to know these people. Whose passion? That's the thing, is there are things that have to fall apart.
Great point.
Without the capitalist incentive of providing for yourself and the monetary gain, there are certain jobs that we just aren't going to do out of the goodness of our hearts. And that's part of it. And I'm certain that Jeff Bezos, if he didn't have the ability to make the scratch and, as you said, live on the yacht, we don't have Amazon. There's no incentive for him to do that, nor to make it work properly. That's the other part, is without the competition, you're not going to fix it. We would only have one type of McDonald's hamburger. There's no other hamburgers. Why would they ever possibly invent anything new? Because we already have the one hamburger they've decided we want. That's it.
I will tell you, Billy, there's a little bit of a line that makes me a little sympathetic to their cause.
Yes.
So the idea of employees fire employer, as it relates to your employer having his own private jet and commuting from California to work when everybody else has to work, I'm like, all right, well, I don't agree with communism, but let's give Starbucks one day.
Yes.
Kind of like Trump on one day. You get to be a little bit of a dictator. Day one, but only for one day.
Only one day.
And if you want to vote to not work for a boss that has his own private jet while the rest of you goes to work. I'm like, you're making it easy on the communists with their arguments. Just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So after we check in on the news with Blake Olson, we're going to be talking with Lindsay Marsh. She's the manager over at Doug's Diner about our event next Tuesday. So you're going to get a chance to learn more about Doug's Diner and what we're going to be doing Tuesday, and hopefully you can join us for that. But first, let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. I don't know what they do with their biscuits at Doug's Diner, but they are the greatest.
Really?
Oh, my goodness. Like 6 months ago, I had one, and I can't eat another biscuit. I love how they do it. They're incredible.
Oh, see, now we've got Reuben, and now we've got biscuits we got to have. I'm going to weigh 500 pounds when we do that place.
Oh, no doubt. I love Doug's Diner.
I'm excited.
Oh, it's awesome. They're great. I'm excited as well. 69 and partly cloudy and beautiful outside, expecting a high of 87 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, 2 trains collided on Thursday night in Boulder, leaving 2 conductors injured. The collision caused a fuel leak. Police said that the 2 conductors suffered minor injuries and are expected to recover. Authorities have not made clear what caused the collision to happen, but said a rail bridge was destroyed.
It got the loudest applause because it's the most contentious issue, and we all are horrified by the suffering on both sides of that horrific conflict. And I just want to see it stop.
That's Hamas in Israel, and that's Jennifer Williams, a Colorado delegate, and in Chicago for the Love Fest. Kamala Khan Harris closed out the DNC last night. She will say anything, except for, let's see, I don't want any more abortions. That will never come out of her mouth. But I think almost anything and everything else will. She had the acceptance speech, and the Democrats reintroduced themselves to the American flag. That was pretty cool. Hello, American flag, saying all the right things, but talk is cheap, and we know Harris's record.
The path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys. I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me
Jeff
to
and
put
Billy.
country above party and self.
Yes.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious.
She's evil.
He
Really
plans
evil.
to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds.
So is she.
Blake, one of the things that Republicans, I think, could utilize to talk about her was, I think this number is correct, 90% of her staff turned over in 4 years as
that
vice
was
president.
It. Great point. Thank you for remembering. She's impossible to work with.
Yes.
They say she's got a drinking problem, and we kind of heard it when she really wasn't doing anything as the vice president, but really difficult to work for.
So you get this kind of gal pal sales pitch that's going on right now.
Yes.
Oprah and Kamala, they're gonna come on over. Right. We're gonna have some fun. Rosé all day, baby.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I think she's a miserable person to be around. I don't know.
I think so too. No, that's a good one. We got to figure out that. We got to hone that.
90% turnover in 4 years. I was thinking about that. When I directed the Centennial Institute in 8 years, I think I'm overtly loyal. I think I had one person leave, but I don't think I fired a single person in 8 years there. I just think, if you're a good person and empower people, like you're like, we're all on the same team. We're all trying to achieve. We all want to go home with bigger pay for our families, all that stuff. So let's go work together on it. People want to do that.
No, they do. You're right. I think I heard some employees saying that they had to say "Good morning, General" or something like that,
or Queen General. Or something like that.
Yeah, because she was an AG. No, I'm serious. I heard that. And can't make eye contact with her. So those are the stories that you hear.
Wow.
Jeff had analyst Joshua Sharf on, Jeff and Billy, Independence Institute, and he kind of nailed it right here.
It was a substance-free convention. Now, from the platform, it was, trying to replicate in some ways 2008.
And author Joe Concha on this morning with you.
She hasn't done a press conference in the last 5.5 years since running for president. The first time since being vice president all these years. And people say, well, vice presidents don't get press conferences. At last check, Mike Pence gave 9 in 2020 alone. And now obviously as a candidate. So no press conferences, no tough interviews. This is the strategy. But I think the debate on ABC on September 10th, that is a place where she won't have a teleprompter, won't have pre-scripted remarks, and may have to answer some questions of relevance where that could be the whole ball game right there if Donald Trump plays his cards right and really prepares and is ready for the zingers that she's practicing as we speak.
And former President Trump, tired of Harris and the lefties hyping Project 2025, which I love, but most people, they don't want to say that. But he doesn't have anything to do with that, and they keep on using that.
Well, she knows I have nothing to do with Project 25. They throw it out. A group of people got together. They did a thing. I haven't even seen it. I don't want to see it. I told them specifically, I don't want to see it. People know where I stand. I lower taxes. She's raising taxes. She's going to give a tax increase of 4 to 5 times what people and companies are paying right now. The country will go into a depression if they do it. She didn't talk about interest rates. I mean, the interest rates are now getting close to record rates. People
got to vote early. RFK Jr. expected to announce today in Phoenix that he's ending his campaign and endorsing former President Donald Trump. And Trump reports that he would consider giving RFK Jr. a role in his administration. And news this morning that RFK Jr.'s wife is not happy about him giving the endorsement. Forget that. Give him the endorsement. We should find out today if the Federal Reserve plans to cut interest rates next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell delivers his keynote speech at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium in WIO. The Gultra fire near Golden is fully contained. That's great news. Eldora Mountain is up for sale. The ski resort's parent company, Powder, announced the news on Thursday, saying that it had already sold a ski resort in Vermont and that Eldora and two others in Oregon and Canada would be listed in the coming weeks. Keegan Bradley with the one-stroke lead at the BMW Championship in Castle Pines, second round today. You'll see plenty of traffic in Douglas County. The Broncos gear up for Sunday's preseason finale. I don't know if gearing up is a good word, but they have the preseason finale on Sunday against the Cardinals at Mile High. 67 in Englewood, 64 in Golden, 69 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. TGIF. Have a great weekend. News Talk, Blake Olson News Talk, 710 KNUS.
Not much is going to change with our weather here in Denver and along the Front Range through the weekend. We'll continue to have seasonably warm temperatures and afternoon and evening chances for thunderstorms. Mid to upper 80s today, lower 60s tonight, 85 to 90 Saturday, 80s Sunday, cooling to just the 70s and low 80s Monday, with late-day thunderstorms through Monday possible. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your retirement plans with a free review to help provide asset protection, long-term care, or even income for life. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. Meteorologist on day on the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
It's been an absolutely fantastic week in Chicago, and this afternoon I'm on a Frontier flight back to the Mile High City from the Democratic National Convention. And last week, Billy and I spent time at the Taste of Douglas County, and it was so fun to just interact with people, to just have fun. Man, there's so much politics, so much division, so much anger and strife. I spent 4 days with protesters here in the streets of Chicago. And I want to just go enjoy a meal, have fun with friends and listeners. And that's exactly what we're going to do next Tuesday at Doug's Diner with a live broadcast. To give us a little preview of what you can enjoy at Doug's Diner is Lindsay Marsh with Doug's Diner. Lindsay, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So give us a little sense of what food you serve up there at Doug's.
Oh my. So we have a lot of amazing dishes. We are a breakfast and lunch diner. We have a lot of huge portions of burritos, pancakes, burgers, anything you can think of to tickle your fancy for sweet and savory. It's amazing.
That's awesome. And how long has Doug's been around?
So Doug's has actually been around since 2010 in Colorado with the original owner, Doug. And then my father, Rick, actually purchased his 2 locations in 2014 and has built a franchise since then. So he has multiple locations in Colorado now.
Wait, that's your dad's Rick? No, the dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad's Rick.
That is so cool because Rick is the guy that kind of had the idea behind Doug's Diner to really lean into the meals that were made from scratch, a lot of homemade recipes, a lot of locally sourced stuff, so that the money that you spend when you're there at Doug's Diner stays in the community and stays in Colorado. So the good stuff you're putting in your belly is going to help feed the farmers and feed the ranchers here in our state. This is amazing. We are so excited to get out there. Now, you do a couple of twists on Huevos Rancheros as well. What do you guys do to kind of give a Colorado twist on eggs in the morning?
Oh, gosh. So we use a lot of our homemade seasonings. If you like omelets with green chili in it, our green chili is homemade. Just a lot of different combinations that we can do on any food, really. Oh, my gosh. Our biscuits are homemade. Our jam's homemade. Just anything and everything.
Now, I got Mark sitting here in the studio with me, and I'm a little upset with him because all morning he's been teasing me about the spicy Reuben. And he says that I have to have it. When I'm at Doug's, he said, you're a Reuben fan, and I am. From my dad. I learned from him. And he says, no, they have a spicy Reuben. They do something to give it a Colorado flavor and makes it unlike any other Reuben in town and elevates the flavor profile. But he won't tell me the secret. What do you do? What do you do to your Reuben at Doug's Diner to make it better than everybody else's?
That would be our homemade green chili that we make.
Ooh, and you said homemade, then green chili. Oh.
Yeah.
So what do you add it inside the sandwich? Is it over the top? I'm getting hungry. Just tell me what I see.
It's normally over the top. You can mix it if you would like, but yeah, you have everything's on a rye bread. You have the Swiss cheese, the Thousand Island, our green chili, sauerkraut, and corned beef. It's just amazing. I'm not a big sauerkraut person, so I get my corned beef on a different dish.
Okay, that's the end of the interview now. We're not talking to Lindsay anymore. The sauerkraut. I'm teasing. I'm teasing you so much. Now, also, newsman Blake Olson, he may be out there with us. He's still trying to arrange his schedule to see if he can join us at Doug's Diner. And he said he was in the place about 6 months ago or so. He's on your side of town. And he said the biscuits are amazing. He said now he's been 6 months. He can't eat a biscuit at another restaurant. And don't tell his wife can't eat at home either. But what do you do to the biscuits? Describe the homemade process. What do you guys do? The love that goes inside. Why can't Blake quit your biscuits? What's going on?
Oh, man, those biscuits, let me tell you, they're made fresh every other day. And they are so dense and thick, you cannot get through a whole biscuit in one setting. So I love taking the other home. I can never decide if I want the top or bottom, which one's better, but I always take the other half home with some jam. And this, today we have like our homemade blueberry and raspberry jam. Last week we had mango and strawberry. So just trying to pick out a jam you want each week with that biscuit to go home for a late night snack or a morning. Oh yeah, really good.
So can't eat the whole biscuit. I think that Jeff and I will take that as a challenge. I think when we can rise to that. Now, also, Lindsay, so Dad is one of the owners, and so you spend a lot of time in and around the restaurant. This is why I got to get personal with you here. Okay, so Lindsay, you've had a rough day. It's been kind of a difficult day. You've gotten the customers taken care of. Now you get a break. You haven't eaten. What is the thing on the menu that you go to? What's the secret one that is Lindsay's favorite at Doug's Diner?
Oh, my new favorite one is the corned beef and hash.
Ooh, you have my attention.
That sounds great.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. So I had this the other day, and it has our amazing potatoes. You have bell pepper and onions mixed in there. We cover it with a holiday sauce, and then I get over easy eggs on top, and you just mix that together. It's just, you have to just close your eyes and savor every bite.
Oh my gosh. Now, I did see on the menu there's something else called Papas. Can you describe what that is and what our listeners are going to have if they choose that off of the menu? And that hash sounds amazing. Now, what are the Papas?
The Papas. So that's going to have like our mountain of browns, our home fries, our hash browns, and like the potato fries. You can choose your cheese. And if you want our homemade red or green chili and our homemade gravy as well, you can choose anything you want with that with your protein. So we have carne asada. For example, I like the carne asada meat, and I like mixing some bacon with that. And then you have everything topped with 2 eggs. So it's just another pile of yummy potatoes that you can never go wrong with some proteins on it.
Oh, that's great. I love the idea of the carne asada because then you've got something that's a little bit spicy. You've got the meat and the protein, but then you bring in the bacon and you add the saltiness on the other side. So you balance the two. That's a really neat flavor profile. Oh, I'm gonna have to bring a backpack. So I'm just gonna have to load a backpack with food so I can take it home. This is ridiculous. Oh, Lindsay, thank you.
We're talking with Lindsay Marsh with Doug's Diner. We're going to be broadcasting live there this upcoming Tuesday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's Tuesday, August 27th, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You can come hang out with Bill and I and enjoy this delicious food. And Lindsay, I just had one of those moments where I connected some dots because I had some problems with my sprinklers earlier this year. So I called up Water Solutions, and this great guy named Jacob came over. Jacob helped me with the sprinklers. We walked around. We talked. We have a lot of the same kind of views on life. So it was absolutely fun. And then he mentioned that he had a wife who worked with Doug's Diner and had owned it. And now I realize I'm talking to his wife right now. Hey. So it's the Jacob, Lindsay, Marsh connection there. What a great family you guys have.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, he just had loved speaking with you, loved that day, and just came home so happy with being able to help you out. And he loves promoting the diner too, which is great because that's our family business for him.
He
and ours.
does.
Yeah. So
I will tell you, he is very proud of you, very proud of that diner, and that's cool. There you go.
That is
there
amazing.
You got a great family that's doing good work here in Colorado.
Yes.
So
thank you so much, Lindsay.
So, Lindsay, give us a sense. Where's the location? Do you have a website if people wanted to learn more? Maybe they can't join us on Tuesday, just want to go this weekend. Tell us more about how they can find out information about Doug's Diner.
So your normal Google superpowers here, just go to Doug's Diner. You'll find all of our locations. My particular location is in Parker. We are underneath the hotel. It used to be called the Lazo Hotel. It's now called the Parker Hotel, which is off of Main Street in 20 Mile or in Dransfeld over by the movie theater. So that's where the Parker location is. And then if you just Google Doug's Diner, we have multiple locations up north. And then, of course, we have our closest next location is Centennial, which is off of Parker Road and Orchard. But for me, I have Parker, and that's where we'll see you on Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. And if you need to turn off your sprinklers this fall, contact Jacob Marsh at watersolutionsco.com, and he can help you there. Great family. We look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Thanks so much, Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay, thanks for the time, and have a great weekend. We will chat with you on Monday.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks. Take care. Oh, that was wonderful.
I'm coming back to some good food, brother.
You are. This is going to be amazing. I'm so excited for all the listeners to be out there with us at Doug's Diner.
Next Tuesday, join us there. Hey, I want to talk to you about my friend Dan Kaplis and Dan Kaplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. This guy is pro-life, pro-family, pro-America. This guy gets it. And that matters because if you're going to show up in an injury case and you just hired some attorney you saw on a billboard, why? You're just going to send a message to everybody else that you're not serious. Hire somebody that's serious with our values, that is a great guy, that most importantly, wins in the courtroom. In addition to being the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes, Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. This guy gets it done. Dan is believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He's trusted so much that Dan Kaplis is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Kaplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases, but he's not just reserved for the rich and wealthy. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, give him a call at 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dankaplislaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. When we return, Channel 7 did a little fact-checking on Jarhead Pulis.
Uh-oh.
How did he do up there on the main stage? It's not good.
You only had 3 minutes. How much could he screw up?
A lot. And Channel 9 is gushing over him. Channel 7 actually did some fact checking and got to the results here. We'll give you that and more. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, wrapping up our coverage of the Democratic National Convention. Now, one thing I did notice coming away from the DNC is with regards to 2028, Jared Polis is way down on the totem pole when you're giving him only 3 minutes in a scripted speech about Project 2025. But Buttigieg gets 20 minutes. Shapiro gets 20 minutes, and they get to have free reign with regards to policy and their achievements and all that stuff. Nothing. Absolutely nothing like that for Jared Polis. In fact, it was almost like a consolation prize. And even in that case, it wasn't good. This from Denver 7. Fact check. Governor Polis's DNC attack on Project 2025 includes false claims about documents' contents. In a 3-minute address Wednesday night, Polis made several false or misleading claims about the conservative agenda before the DNC crowd. He took the stage the third night of the Democrat National Convention, used the platform to attack the conservative Project 2025. He even ripped a page out of it. And he said he was going to use that to talk to independents. But here's the problem. It just ain't true what he was talking about.
What?
So here's Polis's false claims, according to Denver 7. Yeah. Project 2025 and the only legitimate family. Polis made multiple false or misleading claims about the policy plan, including some that had been thrust into the national spotlight by Kamala Harris and then debunked. At one point during a speech, Polis, who is gay, mentioned a section of Project 2025, page 451 to be exact, about family structure. Page 455, he says, 451, sorry, he says, says the only legitimate family is a married mother and father, where only the father works, Polis said, before removing a page from the enlarged copy of the document with a promise to share it with undecided voters. But that claim is not true. It appears to be in reference to social media posts with similar language that were spread wildly during the summer, but not in the document's actual text.
Wait, you're telling me that Jared didn't actually go to page 451 and pull out the quote and what he ripped out of the big giant pretend book was a prop? Notice my shocked face.
Shock, I know.
Totally shocked.
And,
yes.
And previously, if you were a purveyor of disinformation, you got blocked on social media, but not anymore.
No, not when you're
page 451 of the Project 2025 does promote, quote, policies that support the formation of stable married nuclear families, but mentions neither, quote, the only legitimate family, unquote, nor stay-at-home mothers.
Yep.
And then they link to the full text here.
And the criticism on the people pulling out on the LGBTQ is inside of that statement. It just says that the Biden administration is putting too much focus on that community. Okay. That's a fair comment. But does it say that
it's the only legitimate family?
No, nowhere in there. Nowhere on that page does it say there. Yeah, but well, we're expecting.
They continue. Project 2025 and abortion access. Polis also claimed that page 562 of the document claims, quote, Donald Trump could use an obscure law from the 1800s to single-handedly ban abortion in all 50 states, unquote. While the plan does support limits on abortion access and cutting federal funding for abortion services, and page 562 recommends federal law against abortion pills, the Poynter Institute's fact-checking site PolitiFact said the document does not appear to call for an outright nationwide ban on abortion.
So you're saying yet again what Polis said was in the book isn't in the book. I'm noticing a theme. Let's see what the next one is. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Project 2025 and IVF. Another misleading claim by Polis focused on Project 2025 and its vitro fertilization. Page 450 threatens access to IVF, he said. The page in question, however, makes no mention of IVF. And PolitiFact said the practice does not appear to be mentioned in the document at all. The manual doesn't outright call for restricting standard contraceptive methods such as birth control pills or intrauterine devices known as IUDs, the site states.
That is crazy. So now we've gone from the words not appearing in the book to the words not appearing in the book at all. I mean, not on the page. So first he was wrong about the page. Now the words he's using and the claim he's making aren't even in his pretend book anywhere. This is getting better and better. My goodness.
All right.
Yeah, what about miscarriages and stuff? He was talking about that as well.
He does.
Yeah.
Colorado's governor also spoke on Project 2025 suggestion that miscarriages must be reported to the government. That claim is true, but it needs some context. Page 455 of the document correctly states by Pullis in his DNC speech, says the Department of Health and Human Services should ensure that every state reports exactly how many abortions take place within its borders and separate them by category: spontaneous miscarriages, treatments that incidentally result in the death of a child, such as chemotherapy, stillbirths, and induced abortions. The text adds miscarriage management or standard ectopic pregnancy treatments should never be conflated with abortions. So they just want data.
Yeah.
Numbers, which we actually tried in the state of Colorado to figure out why people have abortions. Yes. Could we do a little survey on that?
Yeah. Also,
and then what it gets spun is all of a sudden all the stuff now needs to be reported to the government as if they're going to watch over to you.
And wouldn't we want to know statistics in certain states where maybe we have a higher instance of spontaneous miscarriages? Wouldn't that maybe look at something else that might be going on in their community? I mean, we talked about the idea of, Flint and the water problems they were having. If you don't keep track of any stats like that, how do you know what's going wrong? How would you know that maybe in one state there is a particular medical treatment that is having adverse effects on the baby that the mothers aren't necessarily aware from? But unless you're collecting the statistics, you can't connect the dots because you don't know the numbers. So it's very telling that what they're really against is not knowing the numbers. Yeah, because then if we know the numbers, you can look at ways to prevent, stop, or even help those women. God forbid we help them. That's not what we would do.
That is exactly right, Billy. Final one, Project 2025 and contraception. Yes. Pullis correctly claimed that Project 2025 puts limits on contraception. According to PolitiFact, Project 2025 does recommend restricting some emergency contraceptives from certain no-cost insurance coverage. Page 42 of the document suggests restoring moral and religious exemptions for companies in providing coverage for some contraceptives. It also recommends the defunding of Planned Parenthood, a provider of contraceptives, according to PolitiFact. But the outright banning of all contraceptions,
no,
not so much.
That's a lot of things to get wrong in 3 minutes. I mean, that's like, wow, that's like overachievement there on wrongness.
Here's a question I have about Jared.
Yeah.
We'd love to have him on the show, by the way. I hosted him at the Western Conservative Summit, and Jared, you were treated very well. So you don't have to be afraid. But, Jared, they put you on the main stage and you read a script handed to you.
Yeah.
I know you're playing well with others. But come on, man. You're a Boulder Lib. You don't take orders from the man.
No, I can't tell you what to do.
You don't take orders from the man. You are a free spirit. And you did kind of see that come out a little bit when he said, we like being weird. You know what, Jared? You are a weird guy. That makes you who you are. You walked up on stage, and I understand you got to do what you got to do sometimes, but Jared, you read a script. You knew some of that stuff wasn't very honest and true. You could have had 3.5 minutes to shine and let that weirdo side just full on display for all to see, for all Coloradans and all of America to see, and you chose to follow the man and read the lines handed to you.
Yeah.
A little disappointed in you, Jared. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah. I was hearing, that Bill Clinton, when he was on stage, I like to follow some speechwriters, and evidently, the person that was doing the podcast said they know the Clinton speechwriter from the DNC this year. And Bill ignored the script. I said, no, he goes, maybe a third to half of what I wrote is actually in Bill Clinton's script. So he went up there and just said, yeah, whatever, and just did his thing. Yeah.
And I've always wondered what it's like to be the teleprompter dude when that happens. Because do you try to jump ahead and maybe give it a soft landing in some other area of the speech that they may go to?
Exactly.
Like, okay, well, 10 minutes from now, we're getting to healthcare, but he's talking about healthcare now. Should I fast forward? Or is he going to return? Like, there could be a full Saturday Night Live. It's like. Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, I know this for a fact because I've sat in enough speeches with him. He doesn't read the speech at all before he gives it because he agrees with himself as he gives the speech.
Yes.
So at the National Prayer Breakfast, for instance, he's like, families are central to the health of this nation. So true. So true. So he just agrees with himself as he's reading it because he's reading it for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got to have the same problem too. These guys just jump off. And in part, I think they're brilliant. They're connecting with an audience. And that's ultimately what matters. No one really cares about what you say.
No.
I can't tell you what Kamala said. I can't tell you line by line what Kamala said, but I can tell you how she made me feel.
Yeah.
And that's why these people are successful. That's where they get where they are because they can do those connection points. So I wonder if you're the teleprompter guy for either Clinton or Trump trying to. But Jared, you disappointed me, man.
No.
And you're a bolder liberal.
Kenan Thompson was also doing the Project 2025 thing. You don't go on stage and have to compete with the comedian. Don't do that. Don't do the same thing the comedian's doing. Do something else. Do something else.
You be you, Jared.
Yes.
You be you.
Yes.
Next time.
Maybe he should find something with a little glass thing and a fire extinguisher, and you can smash the thing open, and that's how you get in the Project 25. Maybe that's what you do next time, Jared. Maybe
Way to wrap it up, Billy.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, we'll continue with the Jeff and Bill show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Mississippi protesters in Chicago.
You met a wizard.
Billy, I need a shower.
Yes, you do. And a palate cleanser.
Only one group found out who I was, though, and to their credit, you gays for Gaza. Tip of the hat.
Yeah.
Figured out who I was and then dropped a bunch of F-bombs and expletives. They gave me the middle finger and told me to leave them alone.
Of course. That's how you deal with someone you disagree with rationally and understanding, and you communicate well. That's great. That's fantastic.
We have so much content we'll be releasing on social media, interviews with socialists, Marxists, feminists, the LGBTQ community, environmentalists, abortionists, even a few Christians. So, fascinating week. I especially want to thank Salem, Chicago for hosting me. George did a fantastic job. The entire team
thanks,
here.
George.
Thank you. And a great community to be able to connect with. So if you missed any of it, go to the podcast, 710knus.com. You've been listening to a special broadcast of the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS. Enjoy the weekend.
I'm good.